Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Jennifer Schuett. Jennifer Schuett is an 8-year-old girl who has just completed elementary school. She lives with her single mother, Elaine, who has worked hard to provide her daughter with a comfortable life. Elaine always tries to give Jennifer a happy childhood, full of love and care. Thanks to that, Jennifer has become a cheerful, active girl who loves to explore and learn. However, Jennifer still has a common fear in children, which is the fear of the dark. Therefore, she often sleeps in the same room as her mother. Elaine understands this fear and is always by her daughter's side. On the night of August 9, 2009, mother and daughter slept in the same room again. But Jennifer did not sleep well, constantly turning and lightly kicking her mother, making it difficult for Elaine to sleep. Elaine woke up at 2:30 a.m. and suggested Jennifer sleep in her own room so she could rest before the new workday. But Jennifer replied convincingly, "Mom, I'm going to sleep in my own room tonight because I love you," and she went to her own room to sleep for the rest of the night. Elaine regretted the decision for a long time, but at the time, she couldn't have known what would happen next. The next morning, Elaine went to wake Jennifer but found her missing. She found the window facing the parking lot wide open. Elaine quickly called 911. When the police arrived, she said she hadn't heard any noise or screaming after Jennifer went back to her room to sleep alone. Their apartment was on the first floor, and the window in Jennifer's room looked out onto the parking lot, causing Elaine to fear that someone might have seen Jennifer and entered the room through the window. Elaine realized that their apartment wasn't the ideal place for her and her little girl to live, but it was the best they could afford at the time. However, Elaine's parents decided to help her and her daughter find a new place to live. They bought a small house nearby and renovated it. Jennifer and her mother planned to move there in a few months, and they were there the day before Jennifer went missing. After her daughter went missing, Elaine was extremely sad and remorseful. She said that Jennifer was all she had and prayed that she could return. The police worked tirelessly to find Jennifer. Fortunately, Elaine did not have to wait long for news. Around 6:30 p.m. that same day, the police received a call from parents whose children were playing in the fields and accidentally discovered a little girl. When they arrived at the scene, the police found 8-year-old Jennifer Schuett lying in the middle of a field, 5 kilometers from her home. Jennifer's condition was serious, with a cut on her throat from ear to ear, causing her to lose a lot of blood and turn pale. Jennifer was taken to the hospital in critical condition, where doctors tried to save her life. Due to the injury to her neck, Jennifer was unable to speak. After surgery, Jennifer's condition stabilized, the bleeding stopped, and her breathing was steady. However, when Jennifer woke up from surgery, her mental state changed dramatically. She began to fear all men, including male doctors, making it difficult for her to recover. During this time, Jennifer was constantly panicking and even reacted defensively when male doctors tried to approach her. Elaine tried to explain to her daughter that everyone around her wanted to help and care for her. However, Jennifer did not trust anyone. Her behavior was understandable when she finally revealed what happened to her that night. The challenge was to gently get the information out of her. Now, considering she was only 8 years old, this was really difficult. Jennifer was too scared to speak directly to the investigators, so the detectives gave her a notebook and pen to write down her answers to their questions. Because she was afraid of men, Jennifer wrote a letter to her mother, who then forwarded it to the police. Although she was only 8 years old, Jennifer's written responses were surprisingly detailed and accurate. Jennifer explained that she went into her room, turned on the lights, and began reading a book to help her fall asleep. She eventually fell asleep but was then awakened by a stranger who carried her out of the house. The stranger ran down the sidewalk with Jennifer in his arms. As soon as Jennifer realized what was happening, she tried to scream, but the stranger covered her nose and mouth. The stranger then put Jennifer in his car and identified himself as an undercover police officer. However, Jennifer's instincts told her that something was wrong. She looked around and saw her mother's car in the parking lot, which made her even more confused about where they were going and why. Jennifer had been taught that the police were trustworthy, but she had also been warned not to trust strangers. Her fear and recent experiences with strangers made her suspicious of the stranger's words, and she sensed that something was wrong. Jennifer asked the stranger to drop her off at her grandparents' house. But he refused, saying that they were not home. However, she noticed that her grandparents' car was in the driveway, which suggested that he was lying. The man stopped near Jennifer's school, about 3 kilometers from her house. He told her to watch the moon closely and said that her mother would come when the moon changed color. Jennifer waited anxiously for her mother to pick her up, but her mother never showed up. She suspected that the man was preparing for his true intentions. After 5 minutes, the stranger announced that her mother would not be coming and that they needed to drive further. They stopped at a dead-end street, where Jennifer asked the stranger to prove that he was a real police officer. She questioned him, asking where his gun and badge were. When he said that his gun was in the back seat, Jennifer turned around to look for it. That was when the stranger removed her underwear. Jennifer then lost consciousness, so she was not sure how long she was under his control. Jennifer slowly regained consciousness as she was dragged through a field, her ankles constantly rubbing against the road. The pain from the branches and rocks stabbed into her back, but she pretended to be dead and kept quiet, realizing that this was her chance to survive. Her attacker eventually let go of her legs and left her in the field. Jennifer heard him walk away, followed by the sound of his car door slamming and the sound of the engine driving away. When she regained consciousness, Jennifer found that she could not scream, and she was not sure why. She mustered enough strength to bring her right hand to her neck, where she discovered an open wound. Her hand was covered in blood. The exact time she had been missing is unknown, but it is believed that she had been lying in the field for between 12 and 14 hours. As the sun began to set, Jennifer saw the lights of passing cars nearby and heard the sounds of children. A dog approached her several times, seemingly trying to get its owner's attention, but no one came. Throughout her suffering, Jennifer was bitten by fire ants, which helped her stay conscious. Each time she woke up, she could not believe that she was not dead. Jennifer had accepted her fate, thinking that she would not survive. But everything changed when she heard the sounds of children nearby. Suddenly, something hit her leg. When Jennifer later regained consciousness, she found herself being reassured by a police officer who repeatedly told her, "You've been found, you'll be okay. Just stay with me." The officer's words provided comfort to Jennifer as she was loaded into the Lifeline helicopter. The aftermath was a challenging experience for 8-year-old Jennifer, who struggled to communicate due to her inability to speak. She had to write her answers down on paper to convey her story. Additionally, her fear of men made the situation even more complicated. To make her feel more comfortable, her mother stepped in to ask questions on behalf of the police, relaying Jennifer's answers to the officers waiting behind the door. What's remarkable about Jennifer's story is that, despite her ordeal, she was able to remember the stranger's name. She remembered the man telling her his name was Dennis and describing him as fat, with a possible scar on his face. Police also sought the assistance of forensic pathologist Lois Gibson. Although they could only communicate with Jennifer through gestures and notes, they were able to create an extremely detailed composite sketch of the suspect. The sketch was released in the hope of getting information from the public about the identity of the man in the drawing. Meanwhile, police continued to investigate the scene and found Jennifer's clothes about half a mile away, along with a man's clothes. Despite hopes of finding DNA on the clothes to catch the culprit, no matches were found. Jennifer gradually recovered from her injuries. Despite her young age, she showed incredible resilience. During her recovery, there was a moment when she was upset about a chocolate bar that she couldn't eat. She screamed in frustration and let out a weak sound. The doctors were amazed to see that her vocal cords, which had been nearly severed and were not expected to heal, began to miraculously recover. After a while, Jennifer was well enough to be discharged from the hospital. She returned home and went back to school, eventually finishing high school and college. After that, Jennifer decided to become a children's librarian. Even so, she never forgot what happened that night. Every day, she felt like she was chasing a criminal, and that the criminal could be anyone. Jennifer thought that it could be her new neighbor, or a stranger at the post office or the grocery store. She always felt like the person was watching her and would come back to kill her. Fortunately, Jennifer met a guy named Jonathan. For the first time in years, she was able to trust a man. They fell in love and Jennifer felt a little more secure. However, around that time, the clues to her attacker began to fade. The chances of finding him were slim. Her case was passed from investigator to investigator. But still no progress was made. 18 years after that terrible night, Jennifer received a phone call. It was a notice that Detective Tim Cromie was taking over her case and wanted to meet with her. Tim Cromie pledged to do everything he could to catch the criminal. Jennifer trusted him, and Tim Cromie told her that he would do everything in his power until the end of his career to get the answers she needed about this case. To help with the case, Tim decided to involve FBI agent Richard Renison in the investigation. Richard had worked for the Dickinson, Texas police before joining the FBI. Tim and Richard discovered a large amount of evidence collected on the day Jennifer went missing and shortly after she was found. Jennifer's underwear, shirt, and other items belonging to the perpetrator were particularly important, so they sent a sample of the DNA found on the clothing to Quantico, Virginia. Although the detectives knew that technology had advanced significantly in the 19 years since the crime, they understood that the age of the case could cause the evidence to not be prioritized in the lab. Despite the years, their work finally paid off. The man whose DNA was found at the crime scene was Dennis Earl Bradford, the man Jennifer had described years earlier. The 8-year-old Jennifer had described the man with astonishing accuracy, even though she was on pain medication at the time and unable to speak. Dennis Bradford, 39, lived in North Little Rock, Arkansas. His DNA was entered into the national database after an attack on a woman he met at a bar in 1996. Although he was sentenced to 12 years in prison, he only served 4. Dennis was released on parole on February 4, 2000. Less than a year later, police arrested Bradford for drunk driving less than half a mile from his home. He later remarried and worked as a welder until his arrest in 2009. Investigators Tim Cromie and Richard Renison found a lot of information about Dennis. In 1987, Dennis had been arrested in Dickinson, 3 years before the attack on Jennifer. The investigators discovered that he had 2 addresses within 2 miles of Jennifer's residence, and Jennifer was able to confirm his identity as the kidnapper. They then requested a photo of Dennis's driver's license from when he was 19. Upon seeing the photo, they were shocked because the man looked very similar to the sketch created based on Jennifer's description at age 8. On October 19, 2009, Dennis Cyril Bradford was arrested. However, he claimed that he did not remember why he stopped near Jennifer's residence or why he had mistreated her. Dennis also revealed a detail that investigators did not know. After the attack, he felt so overwhelmed by guilt that he attempted suicide with a handgun. Despite reaching for the gun, Dennis was ultimately unable to pull the trigger and decided to seek psychiatric help. During his stay at the psychiatric hospital, Dennis accidentally visited the hospital where Jennifer was still a patient, and he was very close to her at the time. Immediately after the interview, the detectives informed Jennifer of Dennis Bradford's arrest. She expressed gratitude to the detectives, especially Detective Tim Cromie and Agent Richard Renison, for their efforts and their promise not to drop the case. She also admitted that she looked forward to facing Dennis Bradford in court because he was willing to plead guilty and not drag out the trial. Jennifer was given the opportunity to choose a court date, and she chose August 10th, the 20th anniversary of the attack. A turning point in the case came on May 10, 2010, a few months before the trial, when Dennis hanged himself in his cell. Jennifer faced another challenge in her life due to the trauma Dennis caused. She almost lost the ability to conceive. Fortunately, Dr. Craig Witz, after hearing Jennifer's story, generously offered her his services for free twice in late 2012. As a happy ending, Jennifer and her husband eventually welcomed their daughter Jenna and then their son Jonah. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Shannon Starbuck. Shannon Starbuck, a 42-year-old woman, was found on the bedroom floor of her own home on December 3, 2011. She was lying on her back in a provocative pose, and an erotic massager was placed on her stomach. It was clear that someone had attempted to posthumously disgrace her. The police had no doubt that she had been criminally taken from life, as her body bore bruises and scrapes everywhere. A medical examiner later reported that some of the injuries were caused by the use of a stun gun, and other evidence suggested that her body had been moved. However, the cause of Shannon's demise was determined to be strangulation. The police learned of Shannon's lack of contact a day before the grim discovery. Initially, her ex-husband, Clay Starbuck, raised the alarm. The 47-year-old man reported he had been unable to contact his wife since December 1st, around 3 p.m. Shannon texted her daughter that she was unable to pick up the kids from school due to feeling unwell and asked to wait for their father, whom she had supposedly informed of the change in plans. However, his phone was off, so he was unaware of the situation. Marshall and Serena, the younger brother and sister, were tired and hungry. Therefore, the 15-year-old Logan decided to call her older brother. She asked him to drive them to their father's house, located a couple of blocks from their home. Upon arrival, Austin reported that he too could not get in touch with their mother. Perhaps she had turned off her phone to rest and recover. The boy put the kids in the car and drove them to Clay's house. The man was not expecting them, but was genuinely pleased by the unexpected circumstances. After the divorce, the older children had stayed with him, and the three youngest with their mother. Therefore, the father decided to enjoy their company and did not disturb Shannon. Moreover, such incidents had happened before with her. Besides, he expected to see his former wife at the school basketball game that evening, but she never showed up. On December 2nd, Mr. Starbuck drove the children to school and then headed to his ex-wife's home. The front door was locked and the blinds were drawn. Since he didn't have a spare key, he tried to enter but was unsuccessful. Clay then sent a message stating that if Shannon did not show up by 7 p.m., he would contact the law enforcement. After waiting until the agreed time, he went to the police and explained the situation. 2 sheriff's deputies went to the provided address, but finding nothing suspicious, they returned. The officer suggested waiting another day, and if she didn't make contact by then, he should come back. Disappointed, Clay went home and waited for news. The next day, he went to the station again. Unexpectedly, they told him that his wasn't the only report. A friend and Shannon's mother had also been unable to reach her. This was uncharacteristic of her. This time, the police approached the case more responsibly. 48 hours had passed since Shannon's disappearance, and several people were concerned. After obtaining the necessary permission, the police went to her home. What secrets did Mrs. Starbuck's home hold? Upon arriving at the residence, officers broke the lock and entered. There were no signs of a break-in or robbery. At first glance, everything was in its place. However, the police's investigation was disrupted as soon as they entered Shannon's bedroom. That's where the grim truth was revealed. Shannon Starbuck hadn't just disappeared, she had been brutally killed. It appeared she had just gotten up. Her bed was unmade, the blanket lay nearby, the sheet was missing from the bed, and the mattress cover was stained red. The deceased's cell phone and diary were on the dresser. Forensic experts focused their attention on her room. Beginning of the investigation, the case involving Shannon Starbuck's death was evolutive. Thus, investigators questioned the Starbuck family's neighbors, focusing on every detail, especially reports of unknown people and vehicles in the recent weeks. An autopsy confirmed a chest trauma consistent with the use of a stun gun and also revealed that she had 10 broken ribs. The injuries inflicted upon her head and body were severe and likely caused by a blunt object. The external appearance of the injuries made it difficult to determine the exact time of death. The expert estimated that her life was ended sometime between December 1st and 2nd. Scratches on her body suggested that she had been moved, as her neck bone was broken. The medical examiner stated that something soft, possibly a hand, a towel, or even a sheet, was used during the act of strangulation. The body samples taken, including male DNA, provided a slight clarity in the case, suggesting that the suspect might be among her close male acquaintances, ranging from her ex-husband to secret admirers. Shannon's darker side came to light as investigators hoped to catch the perpetrator quickly. Clay Starbuck cooperated fully with the investigation. He underwent an examination, during which he agreed to document any injuries and damages. Detectives speculated that the perpetrator might also have sustained injuries during the struggle. However, no such injuries were found on Clay's hands. Following him, the 21-year-old Austin and 18-year-old Blake were also examined. Questions arose only regarding the older son, whose hands bore old cuts, but these were attributed to his job in a window manufacturing plant. During conversations with the children, some facts were established that were later clarified. Many of them knew that after the divorce, their mother often went on dates with men and did not approve of it. They had even seen explicit photos on their mother, which led them to speculate that she might have been targeted by a predator operating online. It was clear that everyone loved their mother and was deeply shaken by her departure. However, they disagreed with the changes in her life. In a follow-up interview, Clay was more articulate. He blamed Shannon for the family discord. While he was away on business trips, she frequently saw other men. He even admitted that he suspected Marshall might not be his biological son. Nevertheless, he loved him as his own. In his view, after their relationship ended, Shannon started to excessively indulge and behave inappropriately for her age. He disapproved of how she would drop the kids off at his place when going on another date, among other things. However, by this point, the investigators had managed to not only talk to him and the children, but also interview Shannon's relatives and some friends, enabling the detectives to form their own picture of the deceased and her family. Shannon was born on April 19, 1969, in Anderson, Indiana. She was the youngest in her family, spending her childhood with 2 brothers. Over time, her parents divorced and started new families, giving her additional siblings. From a young age, Shannon dreamt of creating a large and loving family of her own, a vision strengthened by her active participation in church and deep faith. She grew up modest and kind-hearted, with a passion for drawing, which earned her numerous awards and prizes. At the age of 20, she met 25-year-old Clay Starbuck. They met in Florida, where Shannon had moved with her family in her youth. Clay, originally from Alaska, was vacationing in one of the warmer states. They met at a party hosted by mutual friends and immediately took to each other. That evening, Shannon learned a lot about Clay, including that he had continued his education at a school for diesel mechanics in Colorado after high school, then returned home to work on the Trans-Alaskan pipeline, making a good living. However, she discovered he was already married and had 2 beautiful children from that union. Shannon was not deterred by his complicated past. In fact, she saw it as a positive, believing that it gave him valuable experience for married life. The couple married soon after. The newly minted Mrs. Starbuck moved in with her husband, initially struggling to adapt to the new environment and weather, but quickly settling in. However, married life wasn't as idyllic as Shannon had hoped. With Clay often away, leaving her to manage the household alone, yet love gave her strength, knowing that his work shifts would eventually end and he would be back by her side. Meanwhile, she embraced motherhood with his children from his first marriage. It wasn't long before they had their own children together, first a son named Austin, and 3 years later, a brother for him named Blake. In 1996, their family grew again with the birth of a much-awaited daughter, Logan. However, Logan's arrival brought challenges. She was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder at a young age. Shannon embraced her daughter's diagnosis with grace and became her best friend. Later, another daughter named Serena brightened the Starbucks life. Shannon devoted her time to her children, overseeing their health, education, and church teachings. She was known throughout the community for her hobbies, cooking, and crafts. Yet, she was so immersed in her role as a caring mother and loving wife that she didn't notice when her husband began an affair at work. This discovery was a tremendous shock to her and was perceived as a deep betrayal. Consequently, in 2000, she filed for divorce, marking a new chapter in her life. Still harboring feelings for her ex-husband, she decided to move to Arizona to numb the pain of their painful separation by starting a new relationship with another man. However, this attempt failed as Shannon realized she still loved Clay, who was also reaching out, asking her to return. Convinced he had repented, she gave him a second chance. In 2001, the couple welcomed their son Marshall, their 5th child. However, instead of strengthening their marriage, he became a new source of conflict. Even a formal remarriage in 2006 could not save their fractured relationship. 6 months later, they moved to Deer Park in Spokane County, Washington. Clay found a suitable house for their large family, and he continued to work at his previous job, which kept him away most of the time. Shannon was left to manage the household and children on her own, taking them to movies, theaters, and parks, and organizing home parties. However, doubts and distrust had poisoned their marriage, which was further impacted by the long separations and breaks in their relationship. Ultimately, in 2010, the couple permanently separated. As Shannon crossed into her 40s, she began to rebuild her life, holding on to the hope that she might still experience the joy of love. She resolved never to give up or repeat past mistakes. Even when Clay suffered a serious injury, she chose not to return to him. Nonetheless, she supported her ex-husband and provided whatever help she could. In February 2011, Clay left his job and settled permanently in Deer Park, staying close not just to his children but to Shannon as well. He still hoped she would return, but she did not share his view, and finally finding freedom, she enjoyed it. After undergoing surgery, Austin and Blake moved in with their father, happy to be away from their mother's constant supervision. Shannon, finding new purpose, secured a part-time job and enrolled in a dental assistant course. Tired of being a housewife and needing to support her family, especially as her ex-husband stopped paying child support due to his illness, she still had him nearby for emergencies. The children stayed with him after school every Wednesday, as well as the 2nd and 4th weekends of the month. That summer, Shannon proudly received her certification, marking off one dream and starting to pursue another. Hoping to meet a worthy partner, she created a profile on a dating site, feeling a keen need to live for herself. She also regretted spending her best years on a man who did not appreciate her and was capable of deceit. However, a tragic event one December morning ended her dreams. Shannon Starbuck's funeral took place on December 10, 2011. The large number of people who came to the service testified to her being a bright and sincere person. She found her final resting place at a cemetery in Orlando. The search for the culprit and public attention to Shannon's death spurred law enforcement to move quickly. While focusing on her ex-husband, detectives decided to verify his alibi. As a result, they retraced Clay's movements on December 1st. He once again explained what had happened that morning and detailed where and how his car had broken down. Additionally, the results of the initial examination came in. Clay fingerprints did not match any found at the crime scene. This led to a decision to check him against existing databases, while also focusing on Channon's mobile phone, laptop, and personal diary. At the same time, they explored the possibility of other people being involved in the crime. After carefully examining Mrs. Starbuck's mobile phone, detectives added several names to the list of suspects. Men she had communicated with on the dating site raised suspicions. One, Tom Walker, had scheduled a date with her on December 5th, hours before her demise. They had candid conversations and exchanged photos. Tom had asked Channon to take a photo using an adult toy, which she refused. Notably, her body was later found in the exact pose mentioned by Tom. Within an hour, Walker was located. He was shocked not only by the news, but also by being considered a suspect. He immediately explained his activities on the day of her death, which were confirmed by colleagues and surveillance cameras. Next, John Wilson had a meeting with Channon on deck first. From their letters, it was clear he didn't want anything serious. Their chat was just casual. Turns out, the guy used a fake name. His real name was John Kinlan. He worked in a different field and was married, hence the secrecy. On the day, Channon put off their morning meet until later, saying she had a headache. In the end, the date never happened. After taking his DNA, he was let go. His alibi checked out, even though his lies were revealed to his family. After these developments, the investigation reverted to square one. While examining Channon's mobile phone, detectives made a request to the cellular service provider, uncovering another significant detail. It turned out that a 911 call was made from the victim's phone at 9:18 a.m. on the morning of December 1st, but the suspect deleted it from the call log. Thanks to a request to the emergency services, the 32-second call was retrieved. Unfortunately, it contained nothing but sobs and rustling sounds before abruptly cutting off. It was also discovered that after the failed call, the call center operator tried to return the call, but it went to voicemail. According to GPS data, Channon's mobile device was located at her home, pinpointing the exact date of her demise. She had been deprived of life after dropping her kids at school and returning home. This meant that the 11 messages sent afterward were not sent by her. The suspect tried to confuse the investigation. Moreover, he was close to the Starbuck family as he used a nickname for the youngest son, calling him Marsh in the correspondence. After this information, Clay's statements underwent further scrutiny. He had sufficient motive for ending his ex-wife's life. Divorce is not all partners accept new realities with dignity. Moreover, he had a perfect opportunity, knowing her daily routine. Thus, authorities decided to again track the suspect's car route, this time using street surveillance camera recordings. This is where officers' suspicions took shape. Clay's car had not broken down. Concurrently, results from another analysis arrived. DNA material collected from Channon's body matched the suspect's samples exactly. This was a harsh reprisal. The scenario unfolded as follows. On the morning of December 1st, Clay sent a message to his ex-wife, asking her to take the kids to school, fabricating a car breakdown. While she was out, he entered the house and waited. During this time, he accessed her unprotected laptop and found personal correspondences that infuriated the already jealous Clay. When Channon returned, a heated argument ensued, which ultimately led to bloodshed. This explained the unusual pose in which the deceased was found, an act of vengeance for her newfound freedom. Afterward, Clay stayed in the house, impersonating her in text exchanges. His long-standing intentions to harm his ex-wife were revealed. A friend's words to detectives suggested their relationship was not as it seemed. Channon had confessed to being tired of his control and criticism, fearing he might harm her. From June to November 2011, she repeatedly contacted police, claiming he was stalking her and felt unsafe even at home. She eventually secured a restraining order, limiting their communication to text. Careful examination of Mrs. Starbuck's diary made it clear that she feared her former lover and believed he was turning the children against her. He fabricated malicious stories and portrayed her as promiscuous. Therefore, the children's reaction to their father's arrest on February 6, 2012, was not unexpected. They refused to believe in his involvement. They were not bothered by the fact that a tracking program was found on their mother's laptop and a hard drive labeled Channing's desktop computer in their father's house, along with printed correspondences. The older children doubted the authenticity of the DNA analysis, believing the accusation against their father was far-fetched and the case was fabricated. However, the views of law enforcement and other relatives differed. At the trial, the prosecution was confident in the man's guilt, supported by a substantial amount of physical evidence and testimonies. In June 2013, justice prevailed. Clay Starbuck was found guilty of first-degree deprivation of life under aggravating circumstances and disrespect to human remains. He was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. In 2015, Clay's attorney filed an appeal against the verdict, but it was rejected. To this day, the perpetrator remains behind bars at the Airway Heights Correction Center in Spokane County. Shannon's relatives mourn her untimely departure profoundly, yet their hearts are even more shattered by the thought that the children sided with their father. He was so obsessed with his ex-wife that in seeking revenge, he forgot about the consequences. Unable to accept his new reality, he left his children effectively orphaned. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Karen Buckley. Karen Buckley was born in 1991 in Cork, Ireland, to John and Marion Buckley. As the youngest child and only daughter among 4 siblings, Karen grew up in a loving family. She graduated from St. Mary's Secondary School in Mallow, where her kind and caring nature made her a beloved figure. Her dedication to helping others greatly influenced her career choices. After completing her secondary education, Karen enrolled at the University of Limerick to pursue a degree in nursing. However, her fascination with occupational therapy led her to Glasgow, Scotland, where she began studying for a master's degree at Caledonian University. Karen moved to Glasgow in January 2015 and shared an apartment with 3 fellow students, all new to the city. On April 11, 2015, Karen and her flatmates visited a nightclub about 2 kilometers from their home. They arrived around 11:45 p.m. and had a great time. At around 1 a.m., Karen excused herself to use the restroom, telling her friends she would return shortly. She took her purse, but left her jacket at the table where the group was sitting. While Karen was away, her friends continued to enjoy themselves. At some point, it dawned on Karen's friends that she had been absent for too long and should have returned by then, but there was no sign of her. They searched the club thoroughly, but Karen was nowhere to be found. They tried to contact her via phone, but all attempts were unsuccessful. Her friends, who had accompanied her to the club, thought she might have gone home, despite finding it strange that she didn't say goodbye and left her jacket behind. However, when they returned home, they realized their assumptions were incorrect. Karen wasn't there either. The only explanation that occurred to them was that she might have met someone at the club and left with him. This thought lingered in their minds as they went to bed. The next day around noon, Karen's neighbors were surprised to find that she still hadn't returned home. Another attempt to reach her by phone yielded no results. Karen didn't respond to social media messages and didn't log into her accounts. Although Karen's friends had only known her for a few months, they were aware that this behavior was uncharacteristic of her. They didn't try to come up with alternative explanations to reassure themselves. Instead, they went to the police and reported her disappearance, also informing the Buckley family of the situation. The Scottish police promptly launched a search for Karen after her disappearance. Her case was publicized in the press and on television, and her parents made a heartfelt appeal to anyone with information about their daughter's whereabouts to come forward and contact the police. In the meantime, detectives scrutinized footage from cameras at the nightclub where Karen was last seen. The footage revealed that Karen had interacted with an unknown man. Within 36 hours of her disappearance on April 13th, The police identified the mystery man and brought him in for questioning. The young man, 21-year-old Alexander Pacteau, admitted to meeting Karen that night and taking her back to his apartment on Dorchester Avenue, approximately 3 kilometers from the club. He also disclosed that they had been sexually intimate. At around 4 a.m., Karen decided to leave Alexander's apartment, despite his offer to let her stay until morning. Alexander told the police that during their intimate encounter, Karen had accidentally hit her head on the corner of the bed, causing an injury and leaving marks on the sheets. The police reacted with mixed emotions to this information. On one hand, Alexander seemed to be trying to be honest, but on the other hand, it appeared as though he was trying to get ahead of the story and explain what the police might find if they searched his apartment. On the same day, April 13th, a man contacted the police to report that he had discovered a woman's purse. After investigating, it turned out that he had found it in the park near Alexander's apartment, and it belonged to Karen. The purse contained her phone and personal documents, which made Alexander's account of events more believable. It seemed possible that something had happened to Karen after she left his apartment. Meanwhile, the search for Karen remained ongoing and intense. Hundreds of police officers combed through parks, forests, bodies of water, and abandoned buildings, scouring for any clues that could aid the investigation. At this point, the police suspected only one person, Alexander Pacteau, who had been the last to see Karen. The investigators kept quiet about their prime suspect, keeping his identity under wraps. However, when they searched his apartment and the surrounding area 2 days after Karen's disappearance, the press caught wind of it. Reporters from a local newspaper spoke to other residents of the building, and soon Alexander Pacteau's name was no longer a secret. The police secured a search warrant for Pacteau's apartment, and upon entering, they were struck by the overpowering smell of bleach. They also noticed that the mattress on his bed was the wrong size, and small, dark red spots were found on the bed and in the bathroom, which were sent for analysis. Additionally, the officers discovered a box of tools and a large stash of cleaning supplies in the apartment. A police dog, trained to detect human remains, indicated the presence of a body near Alexander Pacteau's car. While awaiting a search warrant for the vehicle, detectives discovered that Pacteau had taken his car to a detailing salon the previous day, but the service was subpar. During the subsequent search, small dark red spots were found on the inside of the passenger door, which were sent to the laboratory for analysis. As each new piece of evidence emerged, suspicions grew that Karen was no longer alive, but the search for her continued. Journalists managed to uncover the suspect's identity, and the next day, Alexander Pacteau's photograph was featured on the front page of a newspaper. Ironically, this move by the press proved beneficial to the investigation. A man who recognized Pacteau's photo in the newspaper contacted the police and provided crucial information. He revealed that he had worked with Alexander in the past and knew that Pacteau rented a warehouse on a farm outside Glasgow, approximately 9 kilometers from his apartment. Any lead was significant, and the police investigated the obtained information. The farm owner confirmed that he rents a storage space to Pacteau for £10 a week. Inside the space, investigators found a 200-liter drum containing Karen's body, which had been dissolved in caustic soda, a highly reactive alkaline substance capable of breaking down organic compounds. They also discovered remnants of a mattress that Pacteau had attempted to burn on a bonfire. On the same day, April 15th, Pacteau was arrested on suspicion of involvement in Karen Buckley's case. Realizing the significant amount of evidence against him, he confessed to taking Karen's life, although he claimed it was in self-defense. A timeline of events was constructed based on evidence gathered by the police and the suspect's testimony, detailing the nights when Pacteau killed Karen and attempted to conceal his actions. On the night of April 11 to 12th, around 1 a.m., Karen left the club, but the reason for her departure remains unclear. Her friends reported no argument and stated that Karen said she would go to the bathroom and return. Even if she had decided to go home, it is unclear why she left her jacket behind. The police reviewed approximately 1,900 hours of surveillance footage and found a recording that showed Karen crossing paths with Panic-stricken after leaving the club. The two had a brief conversation before walking together in the direction of his parked car. It is believed that Panic-stricken offered to drive Karen to her apartment, but instead, he attacked her once they got into the car. Panic-stricken struck Karen 14 times on the head with a large wrench, resulting in her death in his car. The dark red stains found in the car, bathroom, and on Panic-stricken's bed were later determined to be dry drops of Karen's blood. After getting rid of the girl, he started planning his next moves. He first disposed of Karen's purse, which was later found and handed over to the police at around 2 a.m. Afterwards, he went back home, and what he did next shocked the detectives. At 8 a.m., he moved the body from the car to his apartment. Using his phone, he started searching online for information about caustic soda. Then he went to a shopping center where he bought 6 liters of caustic soda, a respirator, and gloves at 9:42 a.m. Thinking that 6 liters wouldn't be enough, he stopped at another store on his way home and bought more caustic soda. When he got back to his apartment, he put Karen's body in the bathtub, attempting to get rid of it. However, he knew his neighbor, who lived nearby, was supposed to return home around 8 p.m., and he realized he wouldn't have enough time to complete his plan. So, he took the body out of the bathtub, wrapped it in a blanket, and hid it in his bedroom. The day after, on April 13th, he threw a wrench into the River Clyde, where it was later found by divers. Then, he went to a nearby shopping center, about 1.5 miles from his home, and asked a consultant for help. Specifically, he requested a product recommendation for removing bloodstains from a mattress. On the same day, he also purchased 2 padlocks. Next, he took Karen's mattress, bedding, and clothes to a farm, where he burned all of them. On his way back home, he bought a barrel, which he would later use to store the body. At around 2 p.m., he took the barrel to a rented warehouse, poured in the remaining caustic soda, and locked the gate with the 2 padlocks he had purchased. Then, he went back home. At 6 p.m., the police visited him at his home and took him in for questioning. As we know, he eventually confessed to his guilt. However, his motive remained unclear. Panic-stricken claimed that he killed Karen in self-defense during an argument that broke out in the car, but investigators did not believe this story, as it seemed like an attempt to justify his actions. The police assumed that by killing Karen and disposing of her body, Panic-stricken was trying to cover up another crime. However, due to the degree of decomposition, experts could not determine if Karen had been subjected to violence before her death. In September 2015, Alexander Panic-stricken was convicted of murder and received a life sentence with the possibility of parole after serving 23 years. Through his lawyer, Panic-stricken expressed remorse to the Buckley family, claiming he was deeply sorry for his actions. Panic-stricken explained to his defense attorney that he was heavily intoxicated on the night of the incident and had no recollection of why he killed Karen. Notably, if Panic-stricken had not entered a guilty plea, he would have been eligible for parole after 25 years, rather than 23. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Cody Johnson. Cody Johnson was born on May 8, 1989, in San Jose, California, where he developed a strong bond with his mother, Schuett Johnson. In 2002, they relocated to Kalispell, a small tourist town in Flathead Valley, situated between Lake Kalispell and Glacier National Park. During his childhood in Kalispell, Cody spent most of his time exploring the outdoors, driving on long trails with friends, and nurturing his lifelong passion for cars. Those who knew Cody, including friends and family, described him as down-to-earth, charismatic, selfless, and genuine. He was the type of person who would go out of his way to help others once he got to know them. Cody's passion for cars eventually turned into a successful business. He started by modifying and souping up cars for racing in his teenage years, which later expanded to include commercial vehicles. As a custom commercial car builder, Cody worked with his uncle and friends at Nomad Communications, where his childhood best friend, Cameron Fredrickson, was his boss. With a thriving career and a strong support system, the only thing missing in Cody's life was a romantic partner to share it with. At the age of 23, Cody was searching for a lifelong partner. He confided in his friends about his desire to marry a woman from a religious background. On Halloween 2011, he met Jordan, the woman who would transform his life forever. Jordan Lynn Graham was born in August 1991 and had spent her entire life in Kalispell with her family. She was deeply devoted to her faith and attended the Faith Baptist Church, where she babysat and worked with families. Her friendships were all rooted in the church, and her ultimate dream was to become a stay-at-home mom and raise a family. When Cody and Jordan met on Halloween 2011, they quickly clicked. Initially, Jordan was shy, but as they conversed, she opened up. She shared her aspirations of starting a family and her passion for nature and the outdoors. Although Jordan took a liking to Cody, she was only 20 years old at the time and wasn't ready to embark on a serious relationship. They went on a few casual dates, but ultimately remained friends. Cody's pursuit of Jordan changed everything. To get close to her, he started attending her church, First Baptist, and socialized with the same people she did. Before long, their casual friendship turned into something more, although it was more significant for one of them than the other. In November 2011, they officially began dating, and Cody fell deeply in love with Jordan. Cody said that he adored her and wanted to spend all his time with her. Even after just a few weeks of dating, Cody was convinced he wanted to marry Jordan, despite her intention to remain chaste until marriage. Those close to the couple observed that Jordan didn't share the same level of passion. Some attributed this to her shy nature, while others were concerned about the imbalance in their relationship. It was noted that the couple rarely displayed affection in public, never holding hands or flirting. Many of Jordan's friends were surprised when she accepted Cody's proposal in December 2012, a year after they started dating. They thought she wasn't ready for marriage, but they were happy for her anyway. Jordan announced her engagement on Instagram, showing off her new ring with the caption, "He proposed, best early Christmas present ever," and a smiley face. The marriage was set to take place on June 29, 2013, and the planning process began immediately. Both Cody and Kimberly Martinez, Jordan's best friend and matron of honor, were heavily involved in the preparations. However, Jordan seemed to be the most enthusiastic about planning the wedding. She even went as far as to commission a professional songwriter, Elizabeth Shee, to write a song for the occasion. In hindsight, the lyrics of the song appear eerily prophetic. Whenever Kimberly or others brought up the topic of what it would be like to be married to Cody, however, Jordan's demeanor would suddenly change. She would repeatedly ask Kimberly if she was making the right decision, and on her wedding day, her true feelings about the marriage were evident. She was visibly nervous, avoiding eye contact with Cody and looking down frequently. When it came time for the wedding photos, she seemed reluctant to make eye contact with her husband. Despite her initial hesitation, Jordan appeared to have overcome her doubts by the time of their first dance and was fully focused on Cody. However, this period of happiness would not last long. The morning after the wedding, she sent a text to her friend from their honeymoon hotel. Despite being married, she had refused her husband's advances on their wedding night and for the next 6 nights. She confided in her friend that she knew he would want to do things she was not ready for, and that she was trying the old that her period started excuse that night, hoping it would work because if she was forced into anything, she would panic. The reality was that Jordan had a deep-seated fear of sex. A mix of her religious beliefs and true feelings about Cody made her anxious about intimacy with him. The tension built until July 7th, 8 days after the wedding. Cody had planned to go golfing with friends, but he called it off at the last minute because Jordan had a surprise waiting for him after church, followed by some quiet time at the lake. That evening, the couple joined a few friends for dinner at the local Dairy Queen. After dinner, Cody went home with Jordan, and that was the last time anyone saw him. Cameron Fredrickson was the first to realize Cody was missing. As a reliable and punctual employee, Cody's absence was unusual. When he failed to show up well into the workday, Cameron decided to visit Cody's new home, which he had bought with Jordan before their wedding. After knocking for a while with no response, Cameron grew concerned and let himself in. Finding the house empty, he searched for any clues that might explain where Cody and Jordan could have gone, but his search was largely unsuccessful. Cameron's concern turned to fear when he found Cody's phone in the garage, which was unusual because Cody always had his phone with him. This discovery led Cameron to suspect that something might have happened to him. After making several phone calls, Cameron realized that no one had seen Cody since they had dinner at Dairy Queen. At 8:30, Cameron went to the police station to file a missing persons report. The authorities took the case seriously, partly due to Cameron's distress. Officer Chaz Zimmerman was one of the first officers to question Cameron, and he found it strange that Cody's boss had reported him missing instead of his wife. Later that day, Kimberly finally managed to contact Jordan, who explained that she had seen Cody leave with some friends in a black car with Washington plates. According to Jordan, Cody had received a disturbing phone call on their way back from the restaurant, which made him upset. Jordan decided to give him some space, and that was the last time she saw him. Later that night, she went to the garage to get her phone charger that she supposedly left in their car. On her way back from the car, she received a text from Cody. He told her that he had received a message saying that someone was going to go for a ride with some of his out-of-town buddies who were visiting. Cody mentioned that he had no idea who they were, but the person always told him one thing. When his friends came to visit, he would take them to Glacier Park. She informed the police about her previous conversation with Kimberly and provided additional information. She said she didn't know any of the men involved and denied that they had a fight that night. When questioned about Cody's disappearance, Jordan suggested that he might have gone joyriding with friends from out of town. The police asked her why she didn't report him missing, and she explained that she didn't want to worry him by filing a report if he was just going to return within a few hours. 48 hours after Cody vanished, his and Jordan's friends and family gathered at their home, perplexed by Cody's behavior. It was out of character for him to abandon his wife without a word about his whereabouts. Despite this, Jordan stuck to her story until Kimberly confronted her. As the impromptu meeting dragged on, Jordan's discomfort grew increasingly apparent. Eventually, she became so agitated that she flung her wedding ring across the room. Some thought it was Kimberly's odd way of coping, but she was convinced there was something else going on. She called her friend when she got home. The next day, Jordan was called into the station and confronted by the officers about her inconsistent testimony. The officer told her that there were inconsistencies in what she was saying compared to other information he had already gathered. Jordan acknowledged this. Shear Johnson saw police with Cody's phone records, hoping they'd find a lead. They questioned a man Cody called, but he had an alibi. His wife was in labor during Cody's disappearance. The police refocused on Jordan, but her story didn't add up. Then a mysterious email arrived, claiming Cody was dead. "Hello, Jordan, I'm Tony. No need to look for Cody anymore. He's gone." Jordan approached Hannah with a somber expression, holding an email, and relayed the news about Cody, as told by Carmen Tony 607. According to the message, Cody had allegedly slipped and fallen off a cliff in Glacier National Park while with some mysterious friends. Hannah was devastated when she read the email and had to urge a lethargic Jordan to report the incident to the police. Instead of calming their suspicions, the anonymous email only fueled the paranoia of the police investigation. The email's convenient arrival, providing the exact information they had been desperately seeking, and its advice to call off the search, raised more questions than answers. What troubled Detective Corey Clark even more, however, was Jordan's unsettling lack of emotion in response to the message. She appeared unfazed, showing no signs of distress, despite the email basically confirming her husband's death. Jordan decided to search for Cody in Glacier National Park, accompanied by her close friends and family, based on the information in the email. During the drive to the park, Hannah noticed Jordan was in an inexplicably cheerful mood, waving her hand out the window. After finding nothing on the first day, they resumed their search on the second day. It was then that Jordan suddenly discovered Cody's body. "We stood there, and she said, 'I think he's down there.' I responded, 'What do you mean? Why would he go down there? This wall is here for a reason,'" Hannah recalled, still puzzled by Jordan's certainty. The coroner's examination revealed that the majority of the damage from the fall was to his head and arms. The loss devastated Cody's family and friends, but Jordan felt relieved, according to Hannah. With the discovery of the body, the police investigation would come to an end. However, the police still had one major unanswered question: who was Carmen Tony 607? During the initial questioning, Jordan directed the police to Tony Stalkup, a fellow car enthusiast and acquaintance of Cody's. Although Tony hadn't seen Cody in several months, he was concerned enough to grant the police full access to his accounts. Unfortunately, the search did not yield the email address they were looking for, and neither Jordan's nor Cody's phone records provided any significant leads. As a result, the police had to obtain a subpoena from Google to uncover the IP address associated with Carmen Tony 607. While awaiting the arrival of the information, the police re-interviewed Cody's family and friends. During this process, Kimberly finally disclosed to the police Jordan's fragile mental state in the period leading up to the marriage. She revealed that Jordan had asked her on several occasions if she should marry Cody, and expressed her horror and fear at the idea of having sex with him. Jordan also confided that she regretted marrying Cody and wished she could undo everything. When Kim advised her to be honest with Cody about her feelings, Jordan responded in a message saying that she should be happy, but she wasn't, and if she told him, it was going to break his heart. 2 days before Cody disappeared, she typed that he had held her down the other night and had been in her face. Then on July 7th, they uncovered that she had intended to talk to him and was terrified of how he would react. Later that day, she ended up at Kim's house and told her how the talk with Cody had gone. She said it had not gone well. Cody had gotten really angry and freaked out, and she had decided to leave so that he could cool off. She had spent the night at her step-parents' home. When the police learned about this, Jordan became an even more likely suspect. The information from Google arrived around the same time and confirmed that Carmen Tony 607's email address was generated from a computer at her stepfather's home. A short interview with each member of the Graham family painted Jordan as the creator, but that was not damning evidence enough. Cody and Jordan's cell phone records were. The cell towers put them at Glacier National Park the night of Cody's disappearance. CCTV cameras also captured pictures of the couple entering Glacier Park at 9:17 p.m. after she denied being with her husband that night. On July 18, 2013, the police questioned Jordan, and when they presented her with evidence, she became emotional and tearful. She finally shared her account of what happened on July 8th with the detective. According to Jordan, she and Cody had a heated argument after she confessed her marital concerns to him. They decided to take a trip to Glacier National Park to calm down, heading for the loop trail. Jordan explained her actions, stating that she thought she was overwhelmed by her emotions, feeling pressured, angry, and experiencing every possible emotion all at once. In the heat of the moment, she turned around and pushed him off the hill, causing him to fall face first down the slope. The detectives were intrigued when Jordan mentioned a blindfold, and they tried to link it to a stray scarf discovered at the base of the cliff. However, Jordan declined to provide more information, and despite their efforts, no concrete evidence was found to implicate her in the crime. Throughout the investigation, Jordan consistently claimed that Cody's death was an accident, not a deliberate act of violence. When questioned about pushing her husband Cody off the bridge, she explained that he had turned his back to her, facing the cliff, and that was when she approached him and pushed him in the back with both hands, sending him over the edge. Jordan also admitted to creating the Carmen Tony 607 profile at her stepfather's house and sending the messages. Following her confession, Jordan left the police station without being charged, remaining a free woman. The police did not file charges against her until July 22nd, at Cody's funeral, where she was seen texting on her phone. This act of disrespect completely eliminated any remaining sympathy for Jordan. Rumors swirled that Jordan had murdered her husband Cody to escape their marriage, the only way to retract her decision without humiliating herself and her family. If Cody were dead, Jordan wouldn't need to file for divorce. Her demeanor at his funeral only fueled these rumors. People started questioning whether Jordan ever truly loved Cody. Jordan was charged with first-degree murder, second-degree murder, and making false statements. After reviewing her case, the jury added a charge of premeditated first-degree murder. Her trial began on December 9, 2013. From the start, the prosecution aggressively attacked Jordan, and after a few days, her situation looked bleak. They dismantled her story, raising crucial questions about why she lied to Cody's friends and family, feigning innocence and remorse. The testimony from Cody's loved ones hurt her case, portraying her as a heartless wife who murdered her husband to avoid intimacy. Her defense attempted to claim self-defense, but it seemed unlikely to succeed. Jordan opted for a plea deal, agreeing to a 30-year prison sentence without parole, in exchange for the prosecution dropping the first-degree murder charge. However, before sentencing, she changed her mind and attempted to withdraw her plea when she learned the prosecution intended to pursue premeditated first-degree murder, which carried a maximum 50-year sentence. The decision rested with U.S. District Judge Donald Malloy, who had to decide whether to uphold her original plea or initiate a new trial. On December 13, 2013, Jordan Lynn Graham received a 30-year and 5-month prison sentence and was ordered to pay a $16,907 fine. Her case was not reopened or reviewed. The federal prosecution aimed to make an example with her case. Jordan will remain in prison until she reaches the age of at least 52. Hello, friends. Welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Nicole Lenway. Nicole Lenway, also known as Nikki Len Ford, was born on July 11, 1989, in a small town in Minnesota. There is little information available about her parents and early life. According to some reports, her father left the family when she was young, and her mother raised her alone, providing her with a good education. Nikki was an exceptional student and athlete, excelling in track and field and martial arts. She decided to dedicate her life to fighting crime and served in law enforcement. After graduating with honors from the police academy, she moved to Minneapolis and joined the Criminal Investigation Department as an assistant investigator. Colleagues described Nikki as a determined, goal-oriented woman and a fearless officer, ready to take risks. However, in her personal life, she became a pawn in the hands of a sophisticated manipulator. In 2012, at a martial arts competition, 23-year-old Nicole met Timothy "Tim" Ama, a coach and martial arts master who was 8 years her senior. Timothy, a gentleman man, won Nikki's heart with his charming nature and kind gestures. He demonstrated his reliability and care, making Nikki fall deeply in love with him. They started a romantic relationship and moved in together. Initially, everything was wonderful, and Nikki felt happy and loved. However, Timothy's behavior began to change gradually. He revealed his true nature, but subtly enough that Nikki wasn't alarmed at first. Behind his charming facade, Timothy was a sophisticated tormentor who enjoyed flirting with other women, even in Nikki's presence. This behavior hurt and humiliated Nikki, making her feel insecure. Nikki had hoped that Timothy would eventually settle down and become more restrained, but months passed and his behavior didn't change. He continued to flirt and engage in affairs, assuring Nikki that he loved only her. When Nikki confronted him, he would snap at her, saying she had no right to tell him what to do. He would later apologize, telling Nikki that no one would ever love her as much as he did, and she would forgive him. The situation escalated in the fall of 2014 when Timothy flew into a rage during a minor argument, grabbing Nikki by the throat and choking her until she almost lost consciousness. He then pushed her into a wall, making her realize that she was in an unhealthy relationship. However, her emotional attachment to Timothy was too strong, and she forgave him once again. Timothy's behavior towards Nikki was extremely controlling and jealous. He would constantly monitor her movements, check her phone and social media without her permission, and accuse her of infidelity without any evidence. Despite his own infidelity, he would manipulate Nikki into believing that no one would ever love her as much as he did, trapping her in the relationship. In November 2015, after a violent argument, Nikki gathered her belongings and left the house. Timothy, who didn't believe she would actually leave, chased her down, grabbed her by the hair, and dragged her back inside. However, Nikki's screams and struggles attracted the attention of their neighbors, forcing Timothy to back down. Finally, free from the abusive relationship, Nikki felt a sense of relief. But Timothy didn't give up. He shifted his tactics from threats and blackmail to romantic gestures, sending flowers and messages filled with tenderness, pleading for another chance. For a month, Nikki stood firm, refusing to return to him. However, her plans were disrupted when she discovered she was pregnant in December 2015. Nikki knew that if Timothy found out, he would use it to manipulate her into getting back together. She tried to keep her pregnancy a secret, but their mutual friends and acquaintances soon informed Timothy, who urged her to return to him, arguing that their child should grow up in a complete family. Nikki, who grew up without a father, understood the challenges of single parenthood, but she also recognized that being with a manipulative and cruel person like Timothy would be detrimental to her and the child. Despite still having feelings for him, she refused to reunite with her ex-boyfriend, but she did agree to let him participate in their child's life as a nominal father. Nicole gave birth to a healthy boy named Callahan Ammer on June 20, 2016. The father, Tim, acknowledged paternity and initially expressed a desire to raise the child with Nicole. However, it soon became clear that Tim was not interested in being a good father and only wanted to use the child as a tool to manipulate Nicole. Nicole took almost a year of maternity leave to care for her son, devoting herself entirely to motherhood. Meanwhile, Tim continued his carefree life with multiple lovers and casual connections. He even had a system in place where he would signal to his lovers when he was available by turning on a purple light in his bedroom. In 2016, Tim started living with his 18-year-old protege, Colin, who had been deeply in love with him since she was 14. Despite the significant age difference, the couple hid their relationship from outsiders, claiming Colin was just renting a room in Tim's house. By the summer of 2017, Nicole was forced to return to work as a forensic expert at the Maine Police Headquarters in Minneapolis. With her unpredictable work schedule, she would often ask Tim to look after their son, mainly because she believed it was beneficial for the boy to spend time with his father and to save on nanny costs. However, Tim would always shift the responsibility onto Colin, who developed a fondness for the little boy and enjoyed taking care of him. Tim would tell Colin that Nicole was a bad mother who didn't want to care for her child and was looking for excuses to offload her son onto them. In the spring of 2017, Nicole started a new romantic relationship with a fellow police officer named Donovan Ford, who treated her with tenderness and care and expressed a desire to adopt Callahan. However, when Tim found out about their relationship, he became enraged and decided to use their son and the naive Colin to destroy Nicole's new relationship. Tim would regularly report to social services that Donovan was abusing Callahan and that Nicole was doing nothing to stop it, resulting in frequent visits from Child Protective Services. For years, Nicole and her new partner were subjected to harassment and intimidation by her ex-boyfriend, Timothy, who falsely accused them of domestic violence. Timothy convinced Colin, a friend, that Nicole and her partner were a danger to their son, Callahan, and that they might harm him. Timothy continued to psychologically manipulate Colin, convincing him that Callahan was in danger and that Nicole and her partner were cruel to him. Meanwhile, Timothy harassed and threatened Nicole and her partner, even filing false police reports against them. Donovan tried to have a calm and rational conversation with Timothy, but it didn't work. Timothy continued to terrorize Nicole and her partner, making their lives a living hell. He eventually took the matter to court, claiming he wanted sole custody of their son. Nicole was terrified, knowing Timothy's ability to lie and manipulate. She understood that he didn't actually care about their son's well-being. He just wanted to punish her for moving on with her life. Meanwhile, Nicole decided to seek a restraining order against Timothy, citing his erratic behavior and the threat he posed to her and her family. She was confident that she would gain custody of their son, but she knew the legal battles could drag on for years. During this time, Timothy continued to concoct fabricated stories, including a false accusation that Nicole had tried to run him over with her car. However, he couldn't provide any evidence to support his claim. In September 2022, the custody case went to court, with Timothy accusing Nicole of harming their son. However, the court saw through his lies and awarded sole custody to Nicole. Despite this, Timothy persisted and appealed the decision. He was eventually allowed to see his son at a specialized family center designed to minimize conflict between parents. However, on April 19, 2022, when Nicole arrived at the family center to pick up her son, a mysterious attacker dressed in black clothing and a mask approached her, shot her 4 times at close range, and quickly disappeared. Incredibly, Nicole remained conscious and managed to call emergency services despite being severely injured. A woman happened to be driving by when she heard shots fired and saw a black figure jump into a vehicle and speed away. She immediately pulled over to ensure the shooter was gone, then rushed to help the victim, Nicole. The woman explained what had happened to the dispatcher, provided the address, and pressed her clothing against Nicole's wounds to stop the bleeding, ultimately saving her life. Nicole spent several days in a coma, teetering on the brink of life and death. She lost a lot of blood and her vital organs were affected, but doctors managed to stabilize her condition. Medical professionals believed Nicole was incredibly lucky, as death was only millimeters away from 2 bullets. One passed near an artery and the other nearly struck her heart. When Nicole regained consciousness, she reported to the police that her ex-lover, Timothy, was the one who had shot her. The police interrogated Timothy, who had a solid alibi since he was at the family center with his son at the time of the attack, as confirmed by staff and internal surveillance footage. The investigation also explored the possibility that someone among the criminals Nicole had previously arrested might have organized the attack. 4 casings were found at the scene, and a camera at the nearest intersection captured a suspicious black Dodge Ram pickup running a red light without license plates. An eyewitness reported seeing the same vehicle, which led the police to check what vehicles Timothy owned. During another interrogation, Timothy mentioned owning a Chevrolet Traverse SUV and a Dodge Challenger, but not a pickup. However, the investigation revealed that Timothy was lying, and a black Dodge Ram, identical to the one used by the shooter, was registered in his name. When shown the surveillance footage, Timothy admitted to owning the pickup, but claimed he rarely used it. The vehicle was equipped with colorful stickers, which were verified, but appeared to have been applied recently. While all the evidence was circumstantial, the police needed to find the weapon and the actual shooter to fully resolve the case. It was discovered that Timothy's vehicle had a satellite navigation system, allowing the tracing of the vehicle's entire route. The system revealed that the car was brought to the back entrance of a Tando school on the evening of April 18th, where it remained all night and almost the entire next day. Road cameras traced the vehicle's route, showing it arrived with license plates. The evening after the incident, the car used in the crime was found, but without the perpetrators. The person who drove the car that day was short and slender, with a feminine silhouette from a distance. As a result, the police decided to detain and question Amma's live-in girlfriend, Colin Larson. A search of their home was also conducted, and although the weapon used in the crime was not found, the police discovered ammunition of the same caliber. Colin, who was frightened, soon began to give confessional testimony, confirming that Timothy was the mastermind behind the crime. However, Colin believed that Timothy had acted with good intentions, thinking they were trying to save little Callahan from a cruel mother. Timothy had spent years manipulating Colin, convincing her that the boy was being mistreated and subjected to violence, and she unquestioningly believed every word. She felt sorry for the child and believed that Timothy wanted to protect him. The trial of the conspirators began in November of the same year. Colin confessed that Timothy had provided her with the firearm and had taken it back after the assassination attempt, but she didn't know what he did with it. The prosecution was largely built on circumstantial evidence, but Colin's confession was the decisive factor. The court also considered the testimony of the victim, Nicole, about Timothy's manipulative nature and his ability to deceive the women who loved him. Timothy Amma was found guilty of organizing a first-degree attempted murder, as well as incitement and aiding and abetting, and was sentenced to 18 years in prison. Colin Larson received 16 years in prison as the executive. A year after the assassination attempt, Nicole fully recovered physically and emotionally. She and Donovan officially legalized their relationship, and he became a loving father to Callahan. The now married Ford couple is expecting their first child together, and the woman who saved Nicole's life will be the child's godmother. It should be added that Timothy will be eligible for parole in 2035, but he will be prohibited from coming within 100 meters of his son, former lover, and her family members, and from attempting any form of contact with them. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Jake Wagner. Hannah Mae Roden, 13, met 18-year-old Edward Jake Wagner, and they became inseparable after he invited her to prom. While their love was palpable, their significant age difference raised concerns. Despite this, their parents did not intervene in their relationship. As time passed, the Roden and Wagner families grew close, often spending weekends and attending parties together. The young couple's love was carefree and passionate. When Hannah turned 15, she revealed her pregnancy, which thrilled Jake. He expected his family to be delighted with the news, as they valued tradition and family lineage. The Wagners saw the baby as a way to continue their family name, which was passed down through generations. In contrast, the Rodens had a more modest approach to family, but still prioritized their children. Hannah's parents, Christopher and Dana, remained devoted to their 3 kids despite their divorce. The Roden family's income was modest, unlike the Wagners. To celebrate Sophie's birthday, a grand party was organized shortly after. Jake proposed that Hannah move in with him and his family, claiming it would make life easier for both of them. However, Hannah refused, having come to realize that Jake was trying to control her and limit her independence. This was partly due to Jake's increasing aggression and suspicious behavior, which had already led to physical altercations on several occasions. Hannah's rejection sparked tension between the Wagners, with each of Sophie's parents determined to gain full custody of Sophie. Driven by their own interests, the families began to advocate for their own rights. Jake's anger towards Hannah peaked when she refused to sign a document granting him and his brother full custody. He even threatened her, accusing her of hiding secrets. The situation escalated when Hannah announced her second pregnancy. Although she claimed the child was fathered by another man, Jake was skeptical. In December 2015, he hacked into Hannah's social media accounts to uncover evidence of infidelity, but found none. Instead, he discovered her communication with Georgia Fort's former mother-in-law, which sparked his interest. A court case was soon to follow as a result. During a court hearing to decide where their granddaughter Sophie would live, Christopher Roden and George Wagner III got into a serious argument. This dispute marked the beginning of the end for the relationship between the two families. The Wagner family soon became convinced that Hannah, Sophie's mother, was an obstacle and that they needed to eliminate her and the entire Roden family, who could potentially gain custody of Sophie. This disturbing idea evolved into a sinister plan by Christmas 2016. While many people were celebrating the festive season with love and kindness, the Wagners held a chilling family vote to decide whether to carry out their plan. Every family member agreed to go ahead, and they began assigning roles and making preparations. Over the next 5 months, they secretly observed the Roden homes, studying their daily routines, work schedules, and surveillance cameras. On the night of April 21, 2016, George Wagner III visited Christopher Roden under the guise of offering him a job to improve his finances. This was just a ruse to get into the house. The next evening, around 8 p.m., Christopher Roden Sr. answered the door, unaware of the danger lurking. Earlier that day, Bobby Jo Manley, Dana Roden's sister, had stopped by Christopher's trailer to care for the family's animals, as she did daily since he had offered her a job. However, she noticed someone was inside, which was unusual at that time of day. Alarmed, she called emergency services, reporting what she saw and requesting help at 477 Union Hill Road. Panicked, Bobby rushed to the neighboring homes of relatives, loudly knocking on their doors. At one of the homes, she found a 3-year-old boy, Clarence's son, who didn't respond to her questions about his parents' whereabouts, only pointing towards the bed. Following the incident, the surviving children were placed in the care of relatives. The neighborhood was gripped by fear, and the police advised the Roden relatives to take precautions and warned all Pike residents to stay indoors at night. After a brutal mass murder shocked the state, the public demanded a swift and transparent investigation, urging authorities to catch the perpetrators as soon as possible. In response, businessman Jeff Ruby offered a $25,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of those responsible. However, he later withdrew the offer. An investigative task force of at least 100 individuals was formed to work on the case. Following the funerals, investigators took possession of the slain family's 3 trailers and several vehicles, transporting them to a secure facility to preserve evidence and protect the victims' belongings. The plan was to return the family's cars and farming equipment to their relatives after the investigation. Forensic experts joined the inquiry, meticulously examining the trailers, but no suspect DNA was found. Although cameras had been installed in the mobile homes, they had been disabled, leaving no useful footage. The perpetrators had clearly planned every detail carefully. Just when it seemed like there were no significant leads, detectives made a breakthrough discovery. Cannabis crops were found at 3 crime scenes. In one location, police found around 200 cannabis plants, leading them to suspect the drugs were being grown for sale, not personal use. This raised questions about potential involvement with Mexican drug traffickers, but the amount of cannabis found was too small to imply involvement with an entire cartel. A relative of the Roden family was arrested for drug trafficking in January 2017, but this was considered a coincidence. Leonard Manley, the father of Dana Roden, denied his daughter's involvement in the cannabis operation, saying that they were trying to drag Dana through the mud, and he didn't like it. Some family members confirmed that Christopher and Kenneth Roden, the older brothers, grew marijuana, but they were unaware of any large-scale operation. The theory that a family feud over illegally obtained money was behind the murders was also disproven. At the Rodens' property, authorities discovered not only banned substances, but also specialized equipment used for breeding fighting chickens and cages containing animals trained for combat. Although these findings initially led investigators to suspect illegal animal fights might be connected to the homicide, it soon became apparent that this was not the case. Despite months of investigation, the true motive behind the crime remained a mystery. By April 13, 2017, local authorities officially announced that they lacked sufficient evidence to make any arrests. However, prosecutor Rob Young insisted that the investigation was still active, implying that they had some promising leads that they were not yet ready to reveal. As the second anniversary of the mass crime approached, the case received little attention from the local media, and neither the sheriff nor the prosecutor attended the memorial service, leading the community to suspect that the investigation had stalled. On May 12, 2017, a surprising turn of events occurred when a SWAT team raided a home in Pike County, just 10 miles from the scene of the crime. Initially, they were looking for suspects, but it was later revealed that their true intention was to gather evidence. Additionally, detectives searched a house in Adams County that had previously belonged to Jake Wagner, although he had already sold it by that time. Approximately a month later, on June 20, 2017, the focus of the investigation officially shifted towards the Wagner family. 26-year-old Jake, 27-year-old George III, 47-year-old George IV, and 48-year-old Angela, who lived 15 miles from the victims, were under scrutiny. The Wagners had moved to Alaska, citing difficulties staying in the area, claiming to have loved the Roden family and stating their deaths caused them immense suffering. Rob Young's words from a year earlier proved true, as the investigation had made a breakthrough and was now seeking information from the public on the Wagners' discussions about firearms, ammunition, vehicles, etc. 2 years prior, it wasn't long before the suspects, running low on funds, returned to Ohio, where detectives had gathered enough evidence for arrests, including proving Jake had hacked into Hannah's account during the examination of the Wagner family's devices. Search queries related to guardianship were discovered. It was also found that Angela had purchased sneakers for the entire family just a few weeks before the crime. The tread pattern of one of these matched that found in one of the trailers. Officers believed Angela was the mastermind behind the horrific scheme, with Jake as the primary executive. According to the investigation, each family member was involved in the criminal act. On November 13, 2018, the Attorney General announced the arrest of the Wagner couple, as well as their sons, who were charged with planning and carrying out the termination of life. Rita Newcomb, Angela's 65-year-old mother, and Frida Wagner, George III's mother, were arrested and charged with perjury and obstructing justice. In 2019, Rita Newcomb underwent handwriting analysis, which proved her involvement in forging a document related to Sophie's guardianship. She struck a plea deal to avoid imprisonment. The charges against Frida Wagner were later dropped in June 2019. The other Wagners refused to cooperate with the investigation and denied any involvement in the Rodens' deaths, expressing sorrow and wishing for the real perpetrators to be caught. However, in April 2021, 5 years after the incident, Jake Wagner decided to make a deal with the prosecution. Under the agreement, he would provide details of the crime in exchange for life sentences for all family members instead of the death penalty. Jake Wagner Jr. admitted to killing 5 people and pleaded guilty to 23 criminal charges, including aggravated murder, burglary, conspiracy, and other crimes. To ensure his daughter Hannah wouldn't be taken away, He thought killing her mother was the only solution. He believed that if he didn't also kill the Rodens, they would seek revenge and fight for custody of Hannah. Angela, who had been involved in the conspiracy, pleaded guilty to several charges on September 10th, including conspiracy, robbery, and evidence tampering. In exchange for her cooperation, the charge of murder was dropped. She received a 30-year prison sentence. George Wagner IV went on trial on August 28, 2022. Despite denying any involvement in the crimes, claiming he was unaware of what was happening, the prosecution presented evidence of his role in planning, executing, and covering up the crimes. He was found guilty on 22 counts and sentenced to life in prison without parole. George Wagner III's trial is set for February 2024. Despite his family members being convicted, he still maintains his innocence, but likely faces the same fate as his son. The once peaceful relationship between the Wagners and Rodens ended in tragedy, driven by a collective and incomprehensible madness. The consequences of their actions left 3 children without parents. As Sophie grows up, she will one day realize what happened, and it's hard to imagine how she will cope with that knowledge. The Wagners' bitter custody battle had a devastating impact on her, denying her the love and support of her parents, relatives, and a stable upbringing. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Aysel Nogoybayeva. Aysel Nogoybayeva was born in 1986 in Tokmak, Kyrgyzstan. After finishing school, she took hairdressing courses and moved to Bishkek to work in a salon. There, she met Azamat Estebesov, who came to her salon for a haircut. They hit it off, and he invited her out for coffee. Aysel's family approved of Azamat, who was religious and respectful of Muslim traditions. At 19, she married him, and soon they had a son. However, Azamat's behavior changed, and he became abusive. One evening, while bathing their son, Azamat accidentally poured too much water on him, causing the child to cry. Aysel reacted angrily, and Azamat responded by hitting her in the face. Aysel left with her son and went to her mother's house. Azamat apologized and begged for forgiveness, promising it would never happen again. However, Aysel, who had grown up without a father, was determined to make her marriage work for the sake of her son. She believed Azamat's apology and thought they could move forward. The family returned to Tokmak, and Aysel became pregnant with their second child. However, Azamat's abuse continued. One day, while Aysel was walking with her son, she ran into some classmates, and after the walk, Azamat struck her again. Aysel suffered a devastating blow from her husband Azamat, which caused her to fall and miscarry. This incident triggered a pattern of abuse, with Azamat constantly looking for excuses to beat her. Despite his once kind and attentive nature, Azamat's gaze was now filled with anger and hatred. Aysel felt trapped, living under Azamat's total control, and her only solace was her children. Her mother, aware of the situation, eventually took Aysel in, but Azamat continued to harass her, begging for forgiveness and promising to change. However, he would return to his abusive ways, and Aysel would be forced to endure it. Aysel went to the police multiple times, but domestic violence is not punishable by law in Kyrgyzstan, and Azamat would only receive short sentences. The abuse continued for 6 years, with Azamat threatening to kill Aysel and her family if she ever filed for divorce. Aysel's family finally helped her escape to Italy, where she worked multiple jobs to save money and become financially independent. After 3.5 years, she had enough to buy an apartment and start a business. Although she was relieved to be free from Azamat's abuse, she missed her children and worried about their well-being. When Aysel returned to Kyrgyzstan, she was shocked to find her children living in squalid conditions, neglected and uneducated. Azamat had raised them according to traditional Turkic values, forcing them to attend a madrasa instead of school. Aysel took her children back, but Azamat continued to harass her, eventually cornering her and raping her in a dark alley. Aysel reported the incident to the police, and Azamat was detained. However, his family intervened, pressuring Aysel to withdraw her complaint. According to Kyrgyz tradition, it is shameful for she to report her husband's abuse, and Azamat's relatives convinced Asel to retract her statement in exchange for Azamat's relinquishment of parental rights. Asel's ex-husband, Azamat, remained her official father despite his abuse. In fact, the Sakalu District Court dismissed a case against him due to a counter-application and reconciliation. However, after his release, Azamat began harassing and threatening Asel, sending her daily messages saying he would kill her if he caught her. He waited for her at her driveway, work, and followed her everywhere for 3 months. Asel's relatives took turns living with her and her children to protect her, but this didn't save her from Azamat's second violent attack. On January 31, 2023, Asel reported to the police again that Azamat had used force against her, and a criminal case was opened. The suspect was detained, but instead of a 5-year imprisonment, he was given 3 years of probation due to his elderly mother's disability and his 2 children. Asel was devastated and felt driven into a corner with no escape. She didn't believe anyone and didn't listen to Azamat's relatives. Instead, she hired a lawyer and filed an appeal with the CH Regional Court, providing all the threatening messages and voice recordings. However, a series of events constantly postponed the hearing, bringing closer the worst day of Asel's life. Azamat continued to walk freely and make attempts on her life, even sending her a photo of a black backpack with a knife and rope, saying he was ready to meet her. On September 20, 2023, Asel woke up her children, had breakfast with them, and accompanied her eldest son to school. As she was about to leave the house, Azamat suddenly appeared and hit her on the head twice. He then grabbed her throat and started strangling her, causing her to lose consciousness. When Asel regained consciousness, she realized that her son was crying and begging Azamat not to harm him. Azamat threw Asel to the floor, picked her up, and continued to abuse her. He stabbed her face and neck with a clerical knife in cold blood. The next time Asel regained consciousness, she was surrounded by blood and didn't realize what was happening. She had lost a lot of blood and her throat was dry, and all she could do was ask for a drink. Asel's ex-husband, Azamat Estebesov, brought her a bucket containing water mixed with blood, revealing his sinister intentions. He started selecting a knife from the kitchen, preparing to inflict harm. His goal was to reach Asel's heart, implying a deep and fatal wound. Just as he was about to attack, the police burst into the house, responding to a call from a concerned neighbor who had heard Asel's screams and knew about her troubled past with Azamat. This timely intervention saved Asel's life. Azamat resisted the officers, attacking them with a knife. Amidst the chaos, the brutal extent of the attack was unclear, but the apartment was covered in blood. It was later revealed that Azamat had started cutting Asel in the bathroom, then dragged her to the kitchen, severing her nose and ears, inflicting multiple wounds on her face and neck, cutting her throat, and beating her severely. When the district police officers arrived, they quickly called an ambulance, assessing the severity of Asel's injuries. In their search for the removed organs, they were unable to find them. Her ears and nose were shockingly found in the monster's pocket. After finding her, the police took Asel to the 4th City Hospital in Bishkek, but surprisingly, the doctors refused to provide her with first aid, claiming she didn't belong to their hospital based on her regional identity card. Not only did the doctors neglect to treat Asel, but they also failed to stop her bleeding. It wasn't until she was taken to a second hospital that she finally received first aid and the bleeding was stopped. Asel was then transferred to the National Hospital, where she underwent a 9-hour operation. A team of 6 doctors worked meticulously to restore her face, carefully reattaching her severed organs, including her earlobes and nerve nodes, which had been precisely cut off with a special knife. The nose was also completely severed. Asel remained unconscious for a long time after the operation, but miraculously survived. Psychologists warned that her recovery would be a long and perilous journey. She was brutally attacked and left disfigured. The authorities launched a criminal investigation into the incident, resulting in the detention of the suspect, who was sent to a pretrial detention center on September 27, 2023. The suspect, Azamat Estebasov, was initially sentenced to a lesser punishment, but thanks to a presidential decree, his sentence was increased to 8 years of imprisonment. The presidential decree also led to the dismissal of 9 judges, including Kelbek Toto Mamatov from the Schuett District Court of the CH region, who had previously released Estebasov under probation supervision. The judges were dismissed due to violations of the Code of Conduct for Judges. The authorities then reopened all previous cases involving Estebasov, with 6 investigators re-examining the evidence. As a result, they found new evidence and brought new charges against him, with a total of 11 articles in the updated indictment. Azamat Estebasov's trial concluded on January 26, 2024, after investigative activities ended in December 2023. Estebasov denied all 11 charges against him and refused to answer the judge's questions, sometimes claiming demonic possession. He also behaved aggressively towards witnesses, leading to a trial postponement. Judge Tulkadir Kulova ultimately sentenced Estebasov to 20 years in prison without parole, plus a fine of 880,000 sums to the state and 2 million sums to his ex-wife. 1 day in pretrial detention counted as 2 in the sentencing. Estebasov appealed, but the sentence remained unchanged. Asel Nui Bayeva, Estebasov's ex-wife, expressed her intention to continue seeking justice, demanding life imprisonment for her former spouse and punishment for those who enabled his actions. She hopes to set an example to prevent other women in Kyrgyzstan from suffering as she and her family have. Asel Nogobayeva's family and activists are demanding a life sentence for her ex-husband, Azamat, who continued to send threatening texts to Asel even after being imprisoned, warning her that he would find her when he got out. This case has highlighted the powerlessness of women in the face of the law in Kyrgyzstan and how a loving partner can suddenly turn into a ruthless aggressor. The case has sparked widespread outrage across Kyrgyzstan, prompting Asel's sister, Diana Yellen, to appeal to members of parliament to pass a law on domestic violence. She warned that if they failed to do so, she would hold them accountable for their inaction, emphasizing that one wrong decision could have devastating consequences. Asel's sister also launched a petition calling for Azamat to be sentenced to life in prison without parole. Asel's sister stated that her sister's experiences with domestic abuse were a stark reminder of the dangers of violent partners. She recounted that even after divorcing her husband 5 years ago due to his physical and emotional abuse, he had continued to stalk, beat, and torment her. She asserted that people like Azamat Estebasov posed a significant threat to society and should not be allowed to roam free, describing them as obsessive and dangerous individuals who belonged behind bars. She demanded a life sentence without parole for the person who had already inflicted severe emotional trauma on his victim. She urged everyone to sign the petition, regardless of where the heinous crime had taken place. She emphasized that domestic violence could take many monstrous forms and that it was essential for women worldwide to unite against this issue. She reminded everyone that a person's religious beliefs did not guarantee their moral character. She mentioned that Asel had started a new life, but her new identity had brought her immense pain. Although her physical wounds were slowly healing, recovering her hearing and breathing functions would be a long and arduous process. In a recent interview, Asel had shared the heartbreaking experience of seeing her face for the first time after the tragedy. Asel had said that she wasn't allowed to look at herself in mirrors, so there weren't any in her room. One day, when her doctors were away, she had taken advantage of the situation to go to the first floor to get dressed. As she was removing her bandages, she had caught a glimpse of herself in a metal operating lamp that the on-duty doctor had left behind. Seeing her reflection had shocked her so much that she had lost consciousness. 2 weeks later, Asel's brother decided to let her see her face while dressing her at home. To prepare, he removed all the mirrors in the house except for one in the bathroom that couldn't be taken down. When he briefly left the room, Aisel quickly got up and took a look at herself in the mirror. The shock was too much, and she fainted. She was overcome with hysteria, saying that no one should ever have to see such ugliness. However, Aisel still had a long way to go before her face could be fully restored. Before undergoing plastic surgery, she would need multiple operations to rebuild her face, including reconstructing her ears and nose. These surgeries would require extensive preparation, skin grafting, and a recovery period of at least a year. Additionally, Aisel had lost 20% of her hearing, which would also need to be corrected. Aisel Nogoybaeva, she who was brutally mutilated by her ex-husband, requires a series of complex operations to restore her ears and nose. Unfortunately, these operations cannot be performed in Kyrgyzstan and must be done in a country like Turkey, which requires a significant amount of money. A Turkish plastic surgeon, Miki Sur, offered to perform the surgery for free, covering all costs. However, after examining Aisel, he realized that plastic surgery alone would not be enough. She needs a series of operations to restore her organs before the reconstructive surgery can take place. The total cost of the surgeries is estimated to be at least $445,000. Aisel's sister, Diana Yellen, is working to raise awareness and funds for the operation, which will take place in Turkey. So far, they have not yet raised even half of the needed $45,000, and there are additional expenses for accommodation, psychological support, rehabilitation, interpretation, medication, and more. Diana Yellen shared heartbreaking photos of her sister Aisel, who was brutally attacked by her ex-husband, leaving her face severely disfigured. The doctors did everything they could to save her, but unfortunately, her ears and nose were beyond repair. Diana is outraged and frustrated with the judiciary of Kyrgyzstan, who allowed her sister's attacker to walk free on probation just a year ago. She believes that if the judge had made a stricter decision, Aisel's ordeal could have been prevented. To raise awareness about domestic violence against women, Diana is organizing fundraising events to help her sister's recovery and rehabilitation. Aisel, who has endured 12 years of abuse, dreams of opening a foundation to support women who have suffered similar traumas. Diana wants to spread a powerful message to women everywhere. Never tolerate abuse and do not expect your abuser to change. Instead, run away and never look back. The true ugliness lies not in Aisel's disfigured face, but in the heart of her ex-husband, who committed this heinous act. Diana warns that if they cannot raise sufficient funds to support Aisel's recovery, she will be forced to share her sister's graphic photos to shame the authorities into taking action. She appeals to every judge, policeman, and deputy to take a close look at Aisel's face and remember the consequences of their inaction. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Kristen Trickle. Kristen Trickle was born on August 14, 1993, in a small town in southeastern Nebraska. However, her early childhood was marked by turmoil. Her biological mother abandoned the family when Kristen was just 3 years old. Despite the challenges, Kristen's father, James, raised her on his own, providing for her every need. Unfortunately, James struggled with a severe and worsening illness. Tragically, he passed away when Kristen was 16 years old. As a result, Kristen was at risk of being sent to a shelter until she turned 18, as there were no other close relatives to care for her. Fortunately, Kristen's aunt and uncle, who lived in Kansas, stepped in to provide a loving home. Although they already had 3 children of their own, they were willing to take in their orphaned niece and give her a comfortable and happy life. Kristen met Colby, a talented young musician, at church. At 18, Colby was already skilled on the guitar and wrote his own songs. He was passionate about building a successful music career. As they spent more time together, Kristen and Colby's friendship blossomed into a romance. Colby's charming personality and musical talents captivated Kristen, and he often wrote songs for her. He was outgoing, friendly, and had a way of making people feel at ease. After graduating from high school, Colby's interests shifted towards the military. He enlisted in the U.S. Armed Forces at 18 and went on to serve for 3 years, establishing a solid military career during that time. Colby maintained a close relationship with Kristen, frequently calling and corresponding with her. At 21, he made a surprise decision to join the reserves, returned home, and proposed to Kristen, who happily accepted. They got married in April 2014. After their wedding, Colby and Kristen settled in Hays, Kansas, where Colby completed his college education and pursued a music career, albeit with limited success. He performed at local events and parties, playing cover versions of popular songs. They had 2 dogs, which they loved dearly, and many people considered their marriage to be happy. However, tragedy struck 5 years into their marriage. On Halloween Eve, October 31, 2019, at around 4 a.m., a distress call was made to emergency services. The caller, who identified himself as Colby Kristen, reported that his wife, Kristen, had shot herself in the head with a revolver that was kept in their home. When medical help and the police arrived at the scene, a young man opened the front door for the officers, but stayed outside himself. Inside, the team found Kristen, who appeared to be surprisingly calm despite the severity of the situation. When the officers entered the bedroom, they found a woman, Kristen, lying on the bed in a pool of her own blood. A large revolver was on her abdomen, and she had a visible gunshot wound on her chin. At first, it seemed like she had already died, but surprisingly, she moved her hand, and an officer detected a weak pulse and breathing. The officers moved Kristen to the adjacent room to position her on the floor for resuscitation attempts. Despite their efforts, Kristen had died by the time the ambulance arrived, and the medical team confirmed her death. Sergeant Brandon Hotman went outside to inform Colby, Kristen's husband, that she had passed away. Colby repeatedly asked if Hotman was sure, and when he was told the truth, he broke down in tears. However, his behavior and tears seemed insincere, given that just minutes earlier, he had been chatting casually with other patrolmen about video games. At first glance, the scene suggested that she had taken her own life, but experienced detectives quickly suspected that something was amiss. It was the eve of Halloween, and she had been preparing for the celebration, which made her apparent decision to end her life all the more puzzling. The detectives found handmade costume decorations on her vanity and themed treats in the kitchen, including lollipop bats and ghosts, gummy worms, and other sweets. This suggested that she had been looking forward to the holiday, which made her death even more unexpected. She was found nearly undressed, wearing only her underwear, which was unusual. Typically, women take care to present themselves in a way that they would want to be seen, even in death. Furthermore, the method of death, a gunshot to the head, was also uncharacteristic of a woman. This method is often avoided by women due to concerns about disfiguring themselves. Kristen's body was severely damaged. One of the most puzzling aspects of her death was the gun itself. The large revolver would have been difficult for Kristen to handle due to her small size and fragile nature. It would have been hard for her to hold the gun, let alone twist her arm to shoot herself in the chin. The position of the gun also raised questions for the officer, as it was lying on her stomach, pointing sideways. Kristen's husband later explained that after finding her, he too had considered taking his own life. He held the revolver to his temple but then changed his mind and called emergency services, hoping to save his wife. At the scene of the crime, detectives were surprised when the victim's phone, which was sitting on a nightstand, rang with an alarm. It turned out that she had set the alarm to remind herself of plans for the morning, but it seemed that she had changed her mind and taken her own life during the night. This unusual detail raised suspicions, and detectives thought that someone might have staged the scene to look like a suicide. As a result, the victim's husband, Colby, became the main suspect and was asked to come to the police station for questioning. He agreed to go willingly. When Colby arrived at the police station, he seemed upset but not overly distraught. He remained calm and confident as he explained what had happened the previous evening. According to Colby, his wife Kristen, a manager at Walmart who was expecting a promotion, had come home from work and they had played video games together. Then, he went to bed early because he wasn't feeling well. Kristen had gone to the kitchen to finish preparing holiday treats, leaving Colby to sleep. But in the middle of the night, a loud bang jolted Colby awake. The sudden noise left him dazed and disoriented, his ears ringing, and he couldn't see anything in the darkness. When he finally turned on the light, he was shocked to find his wife Kristen lying motionless beside him, her head bleeding severely. Strangely enough, if it's true as stated by Colby, he attempted to revive his wife, but soon realized it was hopeless. He then picked up a revolver, put it to his own head, but ultimately set it back down on her body. He called emergency services and went outside to wait for the police. This sequence of events raises several questions. For example, why did he place the gun on her abdomen instead of disposing of it elsewhere? It's also unclear why he waited outside for the police and medics if he thought his wife might still be alive. In situations like this, people usually try to save the person's life or apply pressure to the wound to stop the bleeding. However, Colby did not attempt to help his wife again, claiming he was in shock. While a police officer was trying to provide first aid before the medics arrived, he did not show any interest in his wife's condition. Instead, he stood outside and casually chatted with a police officer about music and video games. When Colby learned of Kristen's death, he briefly teared up, but quickly composed himself. At the police station, he answered routine questions, including whether Kristen had life insurance, which he denied. However, he mentioned that he was eligible for minor payouts from his time in the armed forces. During the conversation, Colby began boasting about his military accomplishments, claiming to have worked in intelligence and participated in special operations worldwide. Despite sounding credible, Colby's claims were largely false. When asked why he thought Kristen might have taken her own life, he attributed it to her long history of depression, which stemmed from a traumatic childhood and adolescence. He cited her mother's betrayal, her father's death, and her forced relocation to live with an uncle and aunt she had never met before as contributing factors. Colby's words seemed convincing, but experienced investigators sensed he was lying and had possibly rehearsed his story. Despite their suspicions, they had no concrete evidence to charge him with a crime, so they had to release him. Kristen's family was shocked and devastated by her death. Her uncle, aunt, and siblings immediately traveled 500 miles to speak with the police and make funeral arrangements. They strongly believed that Kristen would never have taken her own life, citing her strong religious faith and regular church attendance. According to her family, Kristen was a happy and optimistic person who loved life and had big plans for the future. She had even been working on opening a shelter for homeless animals and had found a property she wanted to lease. Investigations confirmed that Kristen had been planning to rent a new property and was expecting a promotion at work, which she was proud of. She was also preparing for Halloween and had promised to visit her sister for her birthday in November. Her relatives stated that she had no history of depression or mental health issues and did not have any harmful habits. Her family also emphasized that Kristen would never abandon her dogs, which she loved dearly. They suspected that her husband, Colby, might have been involved in her disappearance. They described Colby as a controlling and cruel man who dictated whom Kristen could interact with and would become enraged if she didn't respond to his calls or messages immediately. He prohibited her from contacting her relatives, but she would secretly call them from her husband's home. Visits with her family were infrequent. During her last visit, she confided in them that she could no longer endure the mistreatment and had discussed it with her husband. She warned that if things didn't improve, they would have to separate. The autopsy of Kristen revealed a single bullet wound on her chin, which suggested that the shot was fired while she was on her back with the gun pressed to her head. While it was possible that she could have shot herself, it would have been very difficult to do so. There were no signs of struggle or resistance on her body. The detectives, however, were not convinced. Given Colby's history of controlling behavior, they suspected that he might have been violent towards Kristen in the past. They conducted a thorough examination of Kristen's body, looking for any signs of bruises, abrasions, or scratches that might indicate a history of abuse. Despite their efforts, no internal or external injuries were found, aside from the gunshot wound. The investigation then shifted its focus to Colby's personality, revealing that he was a habitual liar who frequently deceived others and even himself with convincing falsehoods. Colby's story didn't add up. Despite his claims of being in danger and having connections to intelligence, he had no history of being in high-risk situations or working with intelligence agencies. In fact, he had been dishonest with those around him about his music career and income. In reality, his wife Kristen was the primary breadwinner, working hard to support their family. Colby, on the other hand, only played occasional gigs during holidays and spent most of his time playing video games. He had talent, but lacked the persistence and patience to succeed, and his laziness held him back. The police investigation uncovered some information. A search of Colby and Kristen gadgets revealed a revealing look at their lives. Kristen's phone calendar was filled with appointments, from haircuts to meetings with a real estate agent. Meanwhile, Colby's messages showed that he had been flirting with another woman, even while at the police station. He had exchanged messages on a laptop in the living room, raising suspicions about his honesty. A recovered search history also revealed that Colby had been researching life insurance payouts in the event of death shortly before the tragedy. This discovery raised more questions about Colby's motives and potential involvement in the events that unfolded. An investigation revealed that Colby had lied about his financial situation. He had taken out 2 insurance policies on his wife, naming himself as the beneficiary in the event of her death. These policies included military spouse insurance and a standard life insurance policy, with payouts that were much higher than Colby had initially claimed. In fact, he had calculated exactly how much he would receive if his wife died. Despite the suspicious circumstances and Colby's inconsistent statements, the case ultimately hinged on the forensic expert's report. The report concluded that there were no signs of violence on the body, except for a single gunshot wound, suggesting that Kristen may have taken her own life. The case was eventually closed, and Colby received the insurance payouts, nearly $50,000 from the military spouse insurance and over $100,000 from the life insurance policy. On the same day the money was deposited into his account, Colby ordered a life-sized realistic doll from an online store, apparently for intimate purposes. Colby indulged in a lavish lifestyle, buying a new gaming console, an electric guitar, and expensive musical equipment. He spent the rest of the money on fancy clothes and frequent nights out at bars and restaurants, feeling carefree and convinced that he had gotten away with the crime since there was no evidence against him. For nearly 2 years, Colby lived a life of luxury, but in the summer of 2021, a new district prosecutor took office and reopened the investigation into Colby's wife's disappearance. Detectives had approached the prosecutor, convinced that Colby had murdered his wife. They presented evidence, including the restored browser history, Colby's unusual behavior, and his clear motive. After reviewing the case, the prosecutor authorized the reopening of the investigation. In July 2021, Colby was arrested and charged with first-degree premeditated homicide and intentionally misleading the investigation. During his arrest, he remained calm and immediately contacted his lawyers, who began working on his defense. Colby's defense team argued that his wife had suffered from chronic depression for many years and that her disappearance was inevitable. They also portrayed Colby as a loving and caring husband, a valorous serviceman, and a devout person, contradicting the detective's suspicions. The prosecution took a unique approach by hiring experienced specialists to create a psychological profile of the deceased and examine her emotional state leading up to the tragedy. This method, known as a psychological autopsy, involved analyzing data from Kristen's phone, social media posts, recent photos, and interviews with her relatives, friends, and colleagues. After months of gathering and analyzing information, the experts reached a clear conclusion: Kristen had no intention of ending her life, given her short-term and long-term plans. The trial and verdict in this complex case were delayed, starting in September 2023, nearly 4 years after the tragedy. Although the defendant had a clear motive, acted suspiciously, and lied during interrogations, the forensic expert's initial conclusion initially worked in his favor. The prosecution had obtained a new report that could potentially change the course of the case. When questioned about the insurance inquiries on his computer, Colby claimed that his wife had likely made them to find out the payout amount. However, the timing of the requests contradicted his statement, as his wife was at work at the time, confirmed by surveillance footage. Colby was also asked about a life-size doll he had purchased shortly after his wife's death, as well as other expensive items. He explained that he couldn't sleep alone and needed something to hold on to, and that he bought the console and guitar to take his mind off his grief. His mother backed up his claims, vigorously defending her son throughout the trial. The psychiatrist's crucial evaluation revealed that Kristen had not intentionally ended her own life. This detailed assessment was instrumental in determining the events surrounding her death. The autopsy report revealed an unusual aspect: the angle at which the bullet entered Kristen's chin was peculiar. The forensic analysis indicated that the bullet was fired from the left side of Kristen, contradicting her dominant right-handedness. This raises questions about whether someone standing on Kristen's left side pulled the trigger or if she shot herself with her left hand. The latter is less plausible considering Kristen was a right-handed individual. This vital evidence raises serious concerns about Colby's potential involvement in Kristen's death. After deliberating the case, the jury unanimously delivered a guilty verdict, finding Colby guilty of all charges. Consequently, Colby received a life imprisonment sentence, eligible for parole after a minimum of 50 years. Notably, Colby refused to accept his guilt, despite being given ample opportunity. Throughout his appeals process, all of his attempts to refute his sentence were ultimately unsuccessful. In the end, no modifications were ever made to Kristen's official cause of death report. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you before. The story began on a Saturday evening in July 2011, during a dance lesson when Dr. Joseph Saunier, a respected and wealthy pathologist, first met Michelle Tina. A prominent figure in his city and beyond, Joseph was a single man enjoying freedom, status, money, and a life of distinction. Michelle was nearly 10 years his junior, successful in her own right, and living a life of pleasure. Their meeting on the dance floor marked the beginning of what would become a passionate romance, a relationship that tragically ended in tears. At that moment, as their ideal partnership on the dance floor blossomed into tender love, no one could have foreseen the events that would follow. Dr. Joseph Saunier's biography before meeting Michelle is filled with both joys and tragedies. Born in 1955 into a well-regarded medical family in Shreveport, Louisiana, he aspired from childhood to continue his family's legacy and become a doctor. With remarkable abilities, young Joseph earned a Bachelor of Science in Medical Science from Louisiana State University, LSU, in Baton Rouge in 1976. He then pursued further studies at LSU in Shreveport while commencing work at Parkland Hospital in Dallas, Texas. Balancing university studies with work commitments skillfully, Joseph aimed to achieve exceptional professionalism in his chosen field. Constantly taking on additional workloads at university and honing his practical knowledge at the hospital, he caught the attention of the management for his dedication and proficiency. In his final year of training, Joseph was appointed chief resident. Upon completing his studies, Dr. Sonier chose to specialize in pathologic anatomy and later became an esteemed pathologist and laboratory director in Lubbock, Texas. Tragically marked by personal loss, Dr. Sonier endured the end of a 27-year marriage, a union he had believed to be happy, when his wife fell in love with another man. Demonstrating strong character and nobility, Joseph accepted her choice and agreed to divorce her. Even though this phase was challenging for him, both personally and professionally, Dr. Sonier maintained his reputation for integrity and responsibility throughout his career and life endeavors. After the divorce, he kept a very warm relationship with Becky and continued to support his two sons. He showed resilience and strength of character. When Becky died 2 years later at the hands of her new husband Joseph, he was shocked by the heinous death of his former spouse. Once again, he experienced a wave of grief and loss, repeatedly recalling the family years gone by and mourning the loss. However, the doctor remained a pillar for the family. He took over all the organizational issues and funeral expenses immediately, helping his sons survive the trauma. The children later admitted that it was his support that helped each of them overcome the pain. The tragedy left a deep mark on Joseph's heart. For a while, he fully devoted himself to work and raising his two sons. Later, the grief he experienced led to a reassessment of life. The man decided to start a new personal chapter in a new city and with a new woman. In 2007, Dr. Sonier moved with his sons from Dallas to Lubbock, Texas, where he accepted a position as chief pathologist at Covenant Health System. Feeling the need for something fresh to fill the void inside him, Joseph enrolled in a local dance studio. He enjoyed those classes also because it was where he met different women. A couple of times, he even tried, unsuccessfully, to build relationships with his dance partners. Then one warm summer evening, Michelle Tina appeared at the dance class. An elegant, graceful woman with a sense of humor and lively eyes attracted Dr. Sonier's attention instantly. Her smile lit up the room and Joseph realized she was exactly who he had been looking for. Michelle also noticed this confident and respectful man moving deftly on the dance floor. She was 47 and Joseph was 57 when they paired up perfectly in dance. With each passing session, they realized they were growing closer. Dr. Sonier suggested dating, and Michelle agreed. Thus began what seemed then like a happy new chapter in both their lives. Michelle had an attractive, innate charm that had such a strong influence on men that they were willing to change their lives for her, even destroy marriages or commit criminal acts for her satisfaction. Rochelle was one of those women possessing a distinct magnetism that naturally draws attention and ignites passion. In reality, both were embarking on new lives with fresh starts after personal romantic upheavals. Departing from Amarillo, Dr. Sonier's new partner was fleeing the fear and anxiety linked with Mike Dixon, owner of a private clinic specializing in plastic surgery and cosmetology. The woman met Mike in 2008 when she visited his clinic for Botox injections. Initially, their interactions were strictly friendly. However, what began as light flirtation soon evolved into a romance. Rochelle was a free, accomplished woman who had built a successful career as an executive in the NFL and did not need anything. Her 4 children were grown, and she owed no one anything. In contrast, Mike was bound by marriage commitments. The plastic surgeon began leading a double life, which came to light a few months later when his wife discovered the affair and filed for divorce after 20 years of marriage. Mike was so captivated by Rochelle that he almost didn't realize how significant a stage of his life was ending. He decisively separated from his wife for Rochelle. Interestingly, Rochelle never intended to marry Mike. She sought only joy and ease from the relationship. The affair required Rochelle to be equally obsessed with her partner, which did not align with her expectations. Unable to get the attention he desired, Mike attempted to pressure Rochelle, a tactic that only drove her away. Recognizing his manipulative tactics and desire to control her life entirely, the young woman decided to part ways with the plastic surgeon. By 2010, their paths had diverged significantly. Nonetheless, even after their breakup, Mike persistently pursued Rochelle, urging her to return. This behavior compelled Rochelle to move away, to vanish from his sight, and free herself from his oppressive influence. This is how Rochelle found herself in Lek. Dr. Sonier and Rochelle quickly bonded. Their relationship gradually blossomed into genuine love. Dr. Sonier's relatives warmly accepted Rochelle and celebrated the partnership's positive impact on Joseph's life. He spared no expense for her, showering her with gifts, inviting her to elite restaurants and private clubs within the city, and even taking her on trips together. After Joseph realized he had finally found a woman he was ready to spend his life with, he took her to Los. In the presence of his entire family, he proposed. At that moment, Rochelle was 47 years old and was absolutely enamored with her new partner. Her social media pages were almost daily filled with love declarations to Joseph. Naturally, Mike Dixon couldn't help but notice these posts. The former lover was emotionally devastated to learn that Rochelle not only had a new man, but also openly confessed her love for him and intended to marry him. He understood that winning back his old flame would be impossible. Despite this realization, he attempted to propose a renewed arrangement where they would at least become lovers again. However, Rochelle firmly rejected the notion and informed Joseph about the incident. Soon after, the couple began to feel as though they were being watched. At one point, they even noticed something resembling a camera flash through their backyard window, but didn't give it much thought, not fully grasping the potential seriousness of the situation. Things took a dire turn on July 11, 2012. A landscaper arrived at Joseph's home to discuss an upcoming project and discovered an open door when trying to contact him. Assuming Joseph might not hear him, he entered the house and found it in disarray. Most concerning was a bullet hole near the front door, suggesting an intruder may have been involved. The landscaper cautiously ventured further into the home in search of Joseph, and then checked the garage. There he found Joseph's son lying lifeless in a pool of blood with no signs of life. His body showed evidence of both stabbing and gunshot wounds. Concluding that the perpetrator might still be nearby, the landscape designer immediately exited the house and called for help. At 2:48 p.m. that day, police received a call and dispatched several patrol cars to the scene immediately. Arriving officers identified the victim as Joseph Sonier, a 57-year-old pathologist. Medical personnel on site confirmed his death. The incident profoundly shocked the public, as it occurred in one of the city's most peaceful, safe, and upscale neighborhoods with virtually no crime history. Dr. Sonier, a well-regarded member of his profession, was known for his calm demeanor and kindness, and had no known enemies who might wish him harm. Despite a broken window, it was clear this was not a robbery. Nothing was missing from the house. A bottle with its bottom shot off was found at the scene, likely used as an improvised silencer for a firearm. Shortly after discovering the scene, a forensic team arrived to collect evidence. The agent in charge appeared inexperienced, leaving several traces behind. DNA from the silencer and blood samples were sent to a lab for further testing. Neighbors told detectives they neither saw nor heard anything suspicious, and there were no CCTV cameras nearby. The investigation revealed that the perpetrator entered through a panoramic window overlooking the backyard, making his attack unpredictable. Inside the dining room, he confronted Dr. Sonier and began shooting. The wine bottle was probably used as a silencer during this time. Blood traces in the hallway suggested that Dr. Sonier was still alive after being shot. He moved to the garage where his attacker caught him and inflicted several stab wounds. An autopsy discovered 5 gunshot wounds and 11 stab wounds, indicating premeditated intent rather than a random act of violence. What remained unclear was who committed this heinous crime and their motive. The investigation focused on Dr. Sonier's close social circle. His fiancée recounted strange events in their lives in recent months before the tragedy. She believed Dr. Sonier had been stalked and mentioned seeing an unfamiliar person watching their home and windows. Michelle also described receiving persistent calls and texts before Dr. Saunier's death. Officers verified this information, but suspected these communications might have come from other women with whom Dr. Saunier appeared to have parallel relationships, since witnesses claimed he was in contact with several women simultaneously. Investigators inquired with Michelle to see if she was aware of the other women involved. She claimed she was unaware. Joseph's sons firmly refuted the notion that their father could have had mistresses, asserting that infidelity was contrary to his character. Nonetheless, investigators continued exploring a theory that jealousy might have motivated the crime. During the next interrogation, Richelle broke under pressure, cried, and admitted knowing several women who might be linked to the incident. She mentioned that numerous former girlfriends continued to stalk Joseph. He ignored these women, but they consistently displayed displeasure regarding his upcoming wedding. One such woman from Florida persistently called even after Dr. Saunier disclosed his serious relationship with Richelle. Another individual, a nurse and colleague of the pathologist, regularly reached out to him as well. A third woman, who had a daughter, sent a letter accusing Joseph of abandoning them shortly before his murder. In this same interview, Michelle mentioned Mike Dixon for the first time. Until now, she hadn't connected her and Joseph's surveillance to Mike. Since he had ceased all attention after her refusal to be his mistress, she assumed he had accepted her marriage and moved on with life. The police now had a potential suspect and sought to question Mike Dixon further. Mike willingly spoke with detectives and confessed that he had been deeply in love with Richelle, having even divorced his wife in pursuit of a future with her. The separation affected him greatly. He tried for a while to win Richelle back, but eventually accepted her decision. He then found someone new, a much younger medical student, who confirmed his alibi. He was at work during the crime and spent time with her afterward. Despite this lead, the investigation encountered several obstacles. All suspects, including Michelle herself, had solid alibis. Detectives attempted to identify possible enemies of the victim or individuals who might have had financial motives tied to his death, but faced challenges at every turn. No new figures emerged by the time the lab results were back. The situation seemed to hit a dead end. Unfortunately, the forensic results didn't add any clarity either. The DNA sample from the bottle didn't match the victim, and the police database couldn't identify whose DNA was found at the crime scene. Then, enforcement officials caught an unusual break. The police department received a call from Paul, an aspiring EMT from Amarillo. He shared that he was living with a buddy named Dave Shepard, who had recently confessed to committing a murder in Leck, and then attempted to take his own life but was saved. Paul provided detailed information given by a neighbor about the crime, including specifics known only to a select group of detectives, such as the use of a bottle muffler. Realizing that Shepard was indeed involved in the crime, officers pursued this lead. The caller claimed that Dave was just the perpetrator and that the mastermind behind the crime was an unknown doctor tied to plastic surgery. Immediately, officers started running a background check on this new suspect and discovered Shepard's violent criminal history. His record showed theft and hooliganism, but didn't include any major crimes. They identified him as divorced, unemployed, and involved in several theft incidents, one involving stealing $330,000 from a prominent businessman. Dave was brought in for questioning and soon started to confess. He confirmed that Mike Dixon had hired him for the crime. According to Dave, they met at a bar where both men were dealing with painful breakups with their partners. Under the influence of alcohol, their conversation took a turn into what became an established friendship. Mike Dixon shared his sad love story and complained about Richelle, who had left him and was now about to marry someone else. The man shared that he can't get over his former partner and is willing to do anything to get her back. Deciding that the only obstacle is Dr. Saunier, Mike and Dave devised a plan. However, their intentions, according to Dave, did not include murder. They merely wanted to slander the pathologist so that Richelle would leave him and return to Mike. First of all, they found women who were paid handsome sums of money $1,000 each, to play the role of mistresses and pursue Dr. Sunier. Then came a letter from a woman with a child, claiming that Joseph had abandoned her. Dr. Sunier denied it each time, and Rachel believed him. It also turned out that the camera flash the couple had seen was the light from Dave's cell phone flashlight. He regularly drove to their house and pretended to conduct surveillance. Each such trip was financed by Mike Dixon, who handed out money for gas and related expenses. When spying and slander failed to separate the lovers, Mike set out to fix the problem in a more radical way. He confided in his friend that he wanted him to kill the pathologist. As payment, Dixon offered 3 silver bars totaling about $110,000. Dave agreed, with one of the bars given as a deposit. The hired killer immediately cashed it in at a pawn shop. According to Dave Shepard, when he arrived at Dr. Sunir's house, things got out of control. It was in shooting. "I got scared," Dave explained, and he started walking away down the hallway. "When I came to my senses from the shock, I shouted, 'Dr. Sunier, are you all right?' Hearing nothing back, I followed him into the garage where he was lying." Dave distinctly heard his last breath and bent down to check his pulse. There was no pulse. In his confession, Shepard claimed that he allegedly stabbed Joseph Sunier in an irrational and foolish attempt to cover up what he called involuntary manslaughter. "I stabbed him a couple times. I don't remember how many times. You say I stabbed 11 times? I had Dr. Sunir's phone in my hand and thought about dialing the emergency number for help, but didn't. Maybe that's why it happened 11 times. Mutilated the remains, then went to Mike's place where I got the rest of the bullion and tried to end my own life," said Dave, concerning agreeing to commit this crime. He did not fully grasp what he was agreeing to, and when he found himself in front of Joseph, he realized that he could not go through with the act. If not for an accidental gunshot, Dr. Sunier would still be alive today. The plastic surgeon was apprehended by police on the same day and charged with first-degree murder based on Dave's testimony and a comprehensive collection of other evidence, including compromising phone calls and text messages containing explicit confessions. During the first interview, detectives hoped to elicit a confession, but Mike Dixon resolutely denied everything, demanding legal representation. A lawsuit ensued. Dave Sheard, as part of a deal with the prosecutor, immediately pleaded guilty to his role as a hired criminal and waived the right to appeal his sentence. Consequently, instead of facing the death penalty, he received a life sentence without parole. Mike Dixon, against whom there was only circumstantial evidence, pleaded not guilty. In an unexpected turn during the trial, Dave, who was a key witness for the prosecution, testified that he committed the crime alone without Dixon's involvement. Under oath, he claimed that the silver bars were intended for investment in a business they had planned to start together. The jury could not reach a unanimous verdict, which led to a retrial being declared. In 2016, during the second trial, Dixon was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole. However, an appeal filed by his lawyers resulted in the reversal of this judgment. Consequently, Dixon was released on bail set at $2 million. The fight for justice persisted as the prosecutor's office sought to have his sentence reinstated by the highest criminal court of the state. The prosecutor's motion, filed on February 11, 2019, was granted in April 2020. Subsequently, Dixon's bail was revoked and an arrest warrant issued again. The Texas Court of Criminal Appeals reversed this lower court decision and reinstated Mike Dixon's sentence. It ruled that he must continue serving his life sentence without parole. Mike Dixon remains incarcerated in a prison in Texas. Dr. Joseph Sunier became entangled in this tragic series of events when he began dating Michelle in July 2011. She still regards him as the main love of her life and deeply regrets that she unknowingly led a criminal to such an honest and loving man. This case is of India's first famous perfume expert, Monica Good. The reason for Monica's murder and the method used by the killer shook the entire India. The date was actually October 6, 2016. Monica Gurdi resided in the village named Sangolda in the famous state of Goa in India. Goa is known for its famous beaches, culture, climate, and historical places. Besides, here you can also get a chance to witness colorful architecture, greenery, and beautiful sunsets daily. Actually, Monica lived in a 3-bedroom rented apartment in a society named Sapna Raj Valley in Sangolda village. As usual, at around 9 to 10 in the morning, Monica's maid arrives at her house and rings the doorbell of Monica's apartment. However, there is no response from inside. Then the maid rings the bell again, but still no response. Then she tries calling out several times and rings the bell 3 or 4 more times. Additionally, she knocks on the door, but still there is no sound from inside and no one opens the door. This situation feels very strange to the maid because Monica has never done this before. Feeling a little anxious now, she calls Monica's brother, Anand Gurda, who lives in Mumbai, and explains the entire situation to him. After this, Monica's brother Anand calls Monica's phone, but there is no response from the other end. He keeps trying to connect with his sister through calls, but Monica doesn't pick up the phone. After that, Anand calls Monica's neighbor, who lived in the adjacent apartment, and Monica had also left a duplicate key to her. Shortly after Anand's call, the woman arrives outside Monica's house with the duplicate key. She then opens the door with the same duplicate key, and as soon as Monica's neighbor and her maid enter the house, both scream because Monica was lying straight on the bed. Her hands were tied behind the bed, and there was no clothing on the lower part of her body. Additionally, Monica was not moving at all. Seeing all this, Monica's neighbor immediately calls the police. Soon after, the Goa police arrive at Monica's apartment with some lady police officers, an ambulance, and doctors. However, when some doctors cover Monica's body and check her pulse, it is found that Monica has passed away. Afterwards, the dead body is sent for postmortem, and then the room is searched. The police searched the room, but the surprising thing was that there was no evidence of forced entry anywhere in the entire apartment. There were eggshells in the room, suggesting they had been eaten recently. Then Monica's purse was checked, but apart from some debit card bills, the police found no evidence in it. Now, to find evidence, the police consider examining all the CCTV footage in the society. But then they find out that there are no CCTV cameras installed in that society. Besides this, the police also question the people living in Sapnaraj Valley. However, nobody has seen any suspicious person entering or leaving Monica's house in the past day. Nevertheless, the police also investigate from the angle of theft, but nothing was missing from Monica's flat that could indicate that this murder was committed for theft. Looking at all these things, the police believe that whoever murdered Monica had some information about her because no one forcefully entered the flat and nothing was stolen from the house. However, Monica was married, but due to some disputes, she had been living alone for a year. Therefore, the police's suspicion first falls on Monica's husband, Bharath Ramanrutham. After that, the police interrogate him about this murder, but nothing comes to light during the interrogation that would make them suspect him. In fact, Monica was the daughter of a former judge in Mumbai, Ramesh Kurda, and she was initially a photographer, but later she started researching on perfumes. After this, in a short span of time, she became a successful perfume expert. Due to her profession, Monica was quite famous not only in her society, but also throughout the city, often seen hobnobbing with big businessmen. Therefore, as soon as news of Monica's murder surfaced, the entire state of Goa was in shock. At that time, this was the news running on every news channel in the country, and the public wanted to know who the mystery killer was. Meanwhile, Monica's postmortem report also arrives, revealing that Monica died due to suffocation, and it also becomes clear that she was raped. Anyway, the police had investigated the case from every angle so far, but they had neither found any suspects nor any clues. But then, during the investigation that evening, a police officer suddenly remembers that they had found some debit card bills from Monica's purse, but they hadn't found any debit card during the entire search. Afterwards, the Goa police approached the bank regarding the bills of that debit card and request to check the transaction details of that card. It is found out that on the morning of October 6th at 6 o'clock, this card was used at an ATM in Porvorim area. Porvorim is merely 4 to 5 kilometers away from Sapnaraj Valley. Following this, the police instruct the bank to keep an eye on this card and also scrutinize the CCTV footage of the ATM in Porvorim. The face of the boy who withdrew money from that card was captured on the ATM camera. Subsequently, with the CCTV footage in hand, the Goa police reach Sapnaraj Valley. As soon as the locals see this footage, they recognize the boy shown in the footage immediately and identify him as Rajkumar, who used to be the old security guard here. However, he was fired from his job 2 months ago on charges of theft. For the Goa police, this was a major success because for the first time in this case, the police had a name and a face of suspect. Now, when the police check Rajkumar's background, they find out that Rajkumar, 21, is from Bathinda city in Punjab state, and there have been several theft cases registered against him before. The police had all the information about Rajkumar, but the challenge now was how to catch him. So, to catch Rajkumar, the Goa police started waiting for the next transaction from Monica's debit card. Some time passes and suddenly the police find out that recently some money has been withdrawn from an ATM in Bangalore City using this card. Let us tell you that Bangalore City is about 370 miles away from Sangolda village. Upon seeing this, the Goa police immediately spring into action and contact the Bangalore City police. After that, Bangalore police checked the CCTV footage of that ATM, and Rajkumar's face was clearly visible in the footage of that ATM as well. Following this, Bangalore police took Rajkumar's photo and began questioning all hotels and lodges around that ATM. After a while, a man at the reception of one hotel recognizes Rajkumar's photo and says, "Yes, a man with this face is staying in our hotel, but he has gone out for some work right now." Afterwards, some police officers dressed in civilian clothes stand outside the same hotel, waiting for Rajkumar to arrive. But as soon as Rajkumar returns to the hotel after a while, the police officers recognize him and apprehend him. Now, because the police officers were in civilian clothes, Rajkumar doesn't even recognize them. And just like that, on October 8, 2016, 2 days after Monica's murder, Rajkumar is arrested from a hotel in Bangalore. Then Goa police are contacted. Afterwards, the Goa police arrive in Bangalore and take Rajkumar to Goa with transit remand from the court. Now, the interrogation begins, and due to the firm questioning by the police, Rajkumar admits to killing Monica. When the police ask him why he did it, he narrates his entire story to the police, and the story goes something like this. Actually, in the month of June, 39-year-old Monica decides to shift to Goa for her perfume business, for which Monica starts looking for a rented flat, and on June 7, 2016, she reaches Sapnaraj Valley to see a flat. At the society's gate, Monica meets security guard Rajkumar, and the society's management had already called Rajkumar beforehand, informing him that a woman would come to see a flat, so show her the flat. Afterwards, Rajkumar shows Monica the flat, and after seeing it, Monica leaves from there. But what happens here is that during showing the flat, Rajkumar falls in love with Monica unilaterally. Now, day and night, he kept thinking only about Monica. About 4 to 5 days pass like this, and then one day Rajkumar becomes very happy because that day Monica had come to shift to Sapnaraj Valley with her belongings. After that, Monica tells Rajkumar that the flat he showed her, she has taken that flat. Now, because Rajkumar was very happy, he himself, with the help of 2 people, delivers Monica's belongings to her apartment. Rajkumar does this because he wanted to see Monica repeatedly, but because he was a security guard, he didn't get many chances to see and meet Monica. But then one day an idea comes to his mind, and he goes to his manager and says that he wants to do the cleaning and maintenance work of the society's cars along with his duty, because he is in desperate need of money. After hearing Rajkumar's need, the manager also agrees to his proposal because he thinks that this way Rajkumar will earn some extra money, and the needs of the people living in the society will also be fulfilled. However, Rajkumar had something else in his mind, and after this, he goes straight to Monika's apartment. After that, he tells Monika that now he can also clean her car, but it will cost her some extra money. Monika also agrees to this because she didn't have enough time to do household chores while handling her business. Now, Rajkumar started cleaning Monika's car and would use the pretext of exchanging keys to also visit Monika's apartment, where he would see Monika 3 or 4 times a day. But it was due to the cleaning of this very car that one day Rajkumar loses his job. It so happened that one day, Monika's umbrella went missing from his car. Monika asks Rajkumar about it, but he says he didn't see any umbrella in the car. After this, Monika complains to the society management and says that today, not only my umbrella, but many other persons' things have gone missing just like before. If such incidents continue to happen in the society, it will tarnish its reputation. Now, after hearing Monika's complaint, the society management takes this matter seriously and begins an investigation. It is then found out that only Rajkumar used to open Monika's car for cleaning, besides Monika herself. After that, a search is conducted in the guard room where Rajkumar used to stay, and Monika's umbrella is also recovered from there. Now, since thefts were already a concern in society, after Monika's umbrella is found, suspicion falls entirely on Rajkumar. As a result, on July 22, 2016, Rajkumar is dismissed from his job on theft charges. From here, the story takes a new turn. While Rajkumar had deeply loved Monika before, now he starts to harbor a significant amount of hatred towards her. However, after being dismissed from his job, Rajkumar leaves and starts working as a laborer in the Ponda area of Goa. But even there, he only works for a few days. During this time, he meets Monika twice and asks her to withdraw the theft complaint, but Monika flatly refuses. Now, hearing this, Rajkumar gets even angrier, but he couldn't do anything at that moment. After that, Rajkumar arrives in Chennai in search of a job, then goes to Mumbai from there, and finally spends some time working in Pune city. Everywhere, Rajkumar earns his living by doing odd jobs, but when he doesn't find any decent job anywhere, he returns to Goa on the 2nd of October 2016. But this time, he had something planned in Goa. There was still a lot of hatred against Monika in his mind. The very next day, that is, on the 3rd of October in the afternoon, Rajkumar reaches Sapnaraj Valley again. He enters the society through the main gate, and by chance, no one sees him entering. Then he goes straight to Monika's apartment below, but he notices that Monika's car is not parked there. Seeing this, he understands that Monika is not at home at the moment. However, instead of leaving from there, Rajkumar decides to wait for Monika to arrive in the society. Now, because Rajkumar knows every route in the society, he decides to hide on the terrace of the society because, generally, no one comes to the terrace. Meanwhile, Rajkumar keeps looking down repeatedly and checks Monika's car, but even after the whole October 3rd passes, Monika's car is not seen. Then the next day, October 4th comes, but Monika's car still doesn't show up, and then October 4th also passes. On October 5th, Monika's car was checked several times by Rajkumar since morning, but it wasn't seen. Now, it had been almost 2 days since he stayed on the terrace. There was neither food to eat nor anything to drink on the terrace during this time. Many times, Rajkumar felt like leaving from there. But the fire of revenge didn't let him go, and fueled by this vengeance, Rajkumar spent more than 48 hours hungry and thirsty on the terrace. Around 3 to 3:30 p.m. on October 5th, 2016, Rajkumar came down once again, and this time he saw Monika's car parked. This meant that Monika had returned home. Seeing this, there was a strange smile on Rajkumar's face, but then he went back to the terrace and started waiting for darkness. After that, he comes downstairs around 6:30 in the evening and rings Monika's flat doorbell. When Monika asks who, Rajkumar identifies himself as a security supervisor. Hearing this, Monika opens the door, but as soon as she does, Rajkumar forcefully pushes her and then shuts the door from inside. Before Monika can comprehend anything, Rajkumar takes out a knife from his pocket and warns her, "If you make noise, I'll stab you." Still, Monica screams loudly to protect herself, but Rajkumar covers her mouth with his hand. Then Rajkumar takes Monica to the bathroom, intimidating and controlling her. After that, he forcefully takes Monica to the bedroom at knife point, lays her on the bed, ties both her hands behind the bed first, then ties both her legs as well. Now, Rajkumar demands money from Monica at knife point. Upon seeing herself clapped, Monica also gets very nervous, so she tells the Rajkumar, "Take all the money in the purse." After that, the Rajkumar empties Monica's entire purse. About 4,000 Indian rupees come out of the purse, like $48. But the Rajkumar's desire is not satisfied with that, and he asks Monica for more money. So Monica says, "I only have this much money right now. If you need more money, I have a debit card. Take it and withdraw money from the ATM." The Rajkumar didn't know how to use a debit card. Still, he learns from Monica how to use it. So, systematically, Monica tells him the way to withdraw money, how to insert the card into the ATM machine, then select the language, and then how to enter the secret PIN. And along with that, she also tells him her debit card's PIN number. I think, maybe in that situation, Monica feels that now Rajkumar will leave her and go from here. Then she will complain to the police and Rajkumar will be caught through the location of the debit card. But Rajkumar takes the money and card and puts a cloth in Monica's mouth. After doing all this, he now knew that Monica could not do anything, so he leaves from there with great confidence and then goes to the kitchen. He takes out water from the fridge, boils the eggs, eats them with great ease, and there was no hurry for him. He was eating and drinking with great comfort because he knew that Monica lived alone in that flat. Now, he also takes out ice cream from the fridge and eats it. Besides, he also eats chocolate, meaning that all the hunger and thirst he had been suffering for 2 days on the terrace is satisfied now. It was around 12 o'clock at night by all this. When his stomach is full again, he returns to Monica. He takes her phone, although it was locked, but Rajkumar's unlock it by forcing Monica. Then Rajkumar opens an adult site on her phone and forcibly shows her 3 adult videos. Feeling all this, Monica becomes even more anxious because she realized that Rajkumar was not going to let her go now. Then Rajkumar unties the rope from Monica's legs and removes all the clothes from her waist down. Then he fulfills his desire that had been in his mind since the first day he saw Monica. It was nearly 2 a.m. in the morning by now, and Rajkumar had been in Monica's apartment for almost 8 hours when Rajkumar's desire was filled. He gets nervous for the first time when the question arises in his mind whether Monica knows him well, and if he leaves Monica alive, she will tell the police about it, and then the Rajkumar will be punished. So the prince lifted a pillow from the same bed and began to suffocate Monica's mouth and kept pressing until she died. Then the Rajkumar got up from there comfortably and went to the bathroom again. After that, Rajkumar shaved his beard, then he bathed, and at 3:30 a.m. on October 6, 2016, in the darkness, he sneaked out of the Sapna Valley stealthily. Then at 6 a.m., after withdrawing money from the ATM, he went to Bangalore, where the police arrested him. After hearing the entire story, all the police officers were quite surprised. After that, the Goa police gathers all the evidence against Rajkumar. Then, on January 6, 2017, a 228-page charge sheet is present in court, charging murder, rape, and robbery. However, the trial of this case is still ongoing. Let's see when the criminal will be punished. If there is any update in this case, we will update you through the channel's community post. So friends, this was the complete story of the Monica Gurd murder case. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Danilo Cavalcante. Danilo Cavalcante was born on July 3, 1989, in Esto, a municipality in the state of Maranhão, Brazil. Unlike many children, he wasn't pampered or comforted with bedtime stories. He didn't have the luxury of being escorted to school at a young age. Instead, he grew up on the streets, a common experience for children in poor Brazilian neighborhoods. The environment in Brazil's favelas was marked by extreme poverty, low living standards, and high unemployment rates. These challenging conditions created a breeding ground for street crime to flourish. When you're exposed to poverty, lack of basic necessities, and violence from a young age, your instincts for self-preservation kick in. People survive by any means necessary. Unfortunately, many individuals who grow up surrounded by violence often resort to similar behavior because it's all they know. The Brando family easily adapted to their new life, enjoying their cozy home and improved lifestyle. Deborah and her sister Sarah were extremely close, not only working together at their cleaning service, but also frequently talking on the phone throughout the day. They had achieved the peaceful and happy life they had moved to another country for. However, a chance encounter would soon alter the course of their lives forever. While spending a day off with her children at the park in 2020, Deborah met Danilo Cavalcante, a 31-year-old fellow countryman. A strong bond quickly formed between them. Danilo was very attentive to Deborah and kind to her children, which made her fall in love with him. She believed she had found a trustworthy and suitable partner. After a few months of dating, they rented a small house and started living together as a family. Initially, everything seemed perfect, but over time, Danilo's hot-tempered and emotional personality began to surface. As his relationship with Deborah deepened, he became increasingly jealous and possessive. Baseless mistrust gradually turned into complete control in their relationship. Scandals erupted repeatedly, leading to violent outbursts. Every night, Dino would get drunk and return home as a completely different, angry person. He demanded total submission from Deborah, punishing her severely in front of the children if she resisted. Despite his abuse, Deborah refused to back down and fought to protect her children. Fed up with the mistreatment, Deborah fled to her sister's home and eventually sought help from the police and the court, obtaining a restraining order to keep Cavalcante away. However, Cavalcante continued to stalk her, threatening violence if she tried to end the relationship permanently. Terrified for her life, Deborah began to investigate Danilo Cavalcante's true identity. By reaching out to acquaintances in Brazil through social media, she uncovered information about his past life and reasons for entering the United States. The truth about her lover's deception left Deborah in shock. On November 5, 2017, Danilo Cavalcante shot and fatally wounded his 20-year-old friend, Walter Jr., Moreira dos Rios in Figueroa, Brazil, over a dispute about a car repair debt. Cavalcante fled the country before authorities could arrest him due to a delay in registering the arrest warrant in the National Warrant Registry. 7 months later, in June 2018, a warrant was issued for his arrest. Cavalcante entered Puerto Rico illegally and obtained a fake ID, eventually settling in Chester County, Pennsylvania, where his sister lived. After Danilo's true identity was revealed, Deborah demanded that he leave her alone, threatening to expose his secret if he refused. However, this ultimatum proved to be a fatal mistake. On the evening of April 18, 2021, Deborah was walking with her children in front of her house, chatting quietly with an elderly neighbor while her kids played nearby. Danilo approached her, and the neighbor, who remained waiting, watched as they conversed calmly. But without warning, Danilo pulled out 2 knives and launched a brutal attack on Deborah. As she fell to the ground, he stabbed her repeatedly. Her terrified children screamed for him to stop, but Danilo was consumed by his own agony. He inflicted a total of 38 stab wounds on Deborah. A horrified neighbor attempted to stem the bleeding and provide emergency aid. Meanwhile, Deborah's daughter rushed to the neighbor's house to call for help and summon emergency services. Deborah Brando was rushed to PO Hospital, but sadly succumbed to her injuries. Meanwhile, Danilo Cavalcante fled Pennsylvania to evade arrest, remaining at large for several hours until he was eventually apprehended by Virginia State Police. Danilo Cavalcante was extradited to Pennsylvania and arrested in Chester County on August 16, 2023, pending trial for first-degree murder. The investigation revealed that Cavalcante had refused to accept the end of his relationship with Deborah and had subjected her to domestic violence and intimidation since 2020. During the trial, Deborah's child, who was present during the traumatic event, gave emotional testimony, recalling the horrific details of that day. The jury quickly reached a guilty verdict, sentencing Cavalcante to life in prison without parole. After the verdict, Cavalcante was taken to the Chester County Jail in Pocopson, where he awaited transfer to a federal prison. However, on August 31, 2023, at around 9 a.m., he escaped from the jail by climbing up a chimney, using the narrow space between two walls in the exercise yard to bypass the barbed wire fences and evade surveillance cameras. Danilo Cavalcante escaped by walking up the roof, running across it, climbing over the fence, and pushing through the barbed wire. This was a surprise, as prison officials thought they had fixed all the weaknesses in the prison system after a previous escape by Igor Bull. They had even added more barbed wire after another inmate, Igor Bolta, escaped a few months earlier. The authorities quickly launched a massive search for Danilo Cavalcante, with alerts going out everywhere. The Pennsylvania State Police Chief gave regular updates to the public through press conferences, asking residents to be vigilant and help track down the escaped prisoner. This strategy worked, and within hours, Danilo Cavalcante was spotted walking along a road about 2 miles west of the prison. On September 2nd, with the help of local residents, authorities used surveillance cameras to spot Cavalcante in the early morning hours. They quickly set up a search perimeter around the area, securing roads and railroads to prevent his escape, and offered a $10,000 reward for information leading to his capture. The initial search focused on a 2-mile radius around the jail in Pocopson Township and Chester County, which is heavily wooded. Just days after the escape, a local resident spotted Cavalcante in a creek bed, but he managed to flee into the woods before police arrived. The search continued, and the perimeter expanded after a week. A security camera then captured Cavalcante on film at Longwood Gardens, a popular botanical garden nearly 3 miles from the jail and just south of the initial search area. The search team has been bolstered with more personnel and advanced equipment to locate Cavalcante. As part of their efforts, helicopters flew over the search area, broadcasting a recorded plea from Cavalcante's Portuguese-speaking mother, urging him to surrender peacefully. The next morning, a security camera detected Cavalcante on a property approximately 2 miles south of the prison. In response, police established a new perimeter around the facility, Longwood Gardens, and nearby schools, which were closed during the search. As the search entered its 6th day, tension mounted in the community. With a convicted murderer on the loose, locals were anxious for answers about Cavalcante's prison escape. In response, police advised Philadelphia residents in Chester County to take precautions, including locking doors and windows, securing vehicles, and staying indoors. Pennsylvania prisoner Danilo Cavalcante, 34, escaped and sparked a massive manhunt. On September 9th, a crucial breakthrough came when Cavalcante was spotted on a video intercom call at a former colleague's home near Phoenix, about 20 miles outside the original search perimeter. Cavalcante, who was skilled at altering his appearance, had shaved and changed into new clothes, allowing him to evade detection as he traveled across the state. He stole a van from a dairy store and drove it to Phoenixville, seeking help and shelter from acquaintances. The abandoned van was found the next morning, September 10th, in a field in suburban East with an empty gas tank. As the search continued, the focus shifted to northern Chester County, and authorities updated the search perimeter. On September 11th, Cavalcante was added to the Interpol list, and the reward for information on his whereabouts was increased. That night, a local resident called emergency services to report a burglary at his garage, describing a suspect matching Cavalcante's description. The homeowner defended themselves by shooting the intruder, Cavalcante, 7 times. Despite being injured, Cavalcante managed to flee the scene and steal a .22 caliber rifle with a scope and flashlight from the home. When police arrived, they found Cavalcante's sweatshirt and shoes near the house. After identifying the perpetrator and learning the time he was now armed, police warned residents in the South Coventry neighborhood to secure their properties by locking doors, windows, and vehicles, and to stay indoors if possible for their safety. A breakthrough came around 1 a.m. on September 13th when an aircraft equipped with thermal imaging technology detected Cavalcante in the woods. However, due to poor weather conditions, police had to wait until sunrise to approach the location. Just after midnight, a security alarm went off within the search perimeter, leading authorities to the suspect's location. According to officials, the thermal imaging technology played a crucial role in tracking down Cavalcante, ultimately leading to his capture. On September 13th, around 8 a.m., the police found Danilo Cavalcante, a dangerous criminal, asleep with a stolen rifle. He attempted to flee by crawling into dense undergrowth, but a police dog named Yoda caught him by biting his head and holding him until the police arrived. According to Lieutenant Colonel George Biven, Yoda inflicted minor head injuries on Cavalcante during the capture. Biven explained that the police were able to approach quietly, which gave them the element of surprise, allowing them to capture Cavalcante without anyone getting hurt. Immediately after his capture, Cavalcante was questioned and revealed that he had survived on watermelons and creek water, traveled only at night, and even had a close call with a police officer while hiding. He had planned to steal a car and escape to Canada. Since being returned to prison, Cavalcante has been charged with multiple crimes related to his escape, including burglary, trespassing, and theft. Following Cavalcante's capture, local and state officials, including Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, expressed their gratitude to the numerous law enforcement officers who contributed to the search. Following Cavalcante's escape, the police set up a perimeter several miles in each direction. The Chester County Jail Board, responsible for overseeing the Chester County Jail, faced intense criticism from local residents for failing to prevent Cavalcante's escape. Residents argued that the jail had the opportunity to implement necessary security upgrades after Igor Boll's escape attempt on May 19th, and that these upgrades could have potentially prevented Cavalcante's escape, as he used the same method as Bolta. The prison has taken action against the guard who was on duty during Cavalcante's escape on September 7th, citing that the guard had a clear chance to stop Cavalcante during the escape. Following the recapture of the offender, the Chester County Jail has implemented new security measures, including the installation of a tin roof over the area where Cavalcante climbed up 2 walls to reach the roof and escape. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro emphasized that Chester County officials need to provide answers regarding the escape, considering the prison's past history. He praised the collective effort of law enforcement agencies and local residents who worked together to apprehend and bring to justice Danilo, the offender who will now face punishment and remain behind bars.